Oshkosh Common Council meeting. Please call the roll.
Wojciechowski,
Here.
Erickson. Here. Ford.
Here.
Muglauer.
Here.
Hanson.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Palmieri.
Here.
Present 7.
And Councilmember Wojciechowski will lead us in the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As we gather tonight, we are grateful for the good things that have come to this city. May our decisions always be ones that are for the well-being of all whom we govern. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, this evening, we have 2 staff that are being introduced.
Madam Mayor, I'm going to turn it over to first our Interim Community Development Director, Kelly Nyforth, to introduce our new grants coordinator.
Good evening. I'd like to introduce Emily Tardif. Emily is our new grants coordinator in the Economic Development Division. She replaces Darlene Brand, who retired after 40 years of service here at the city. So she has a lot of work that she's catching up on, but she's doing great. Emily's actually originally from the UP, so we're happy to have her come down south and join us here in Oshkosh. And I'm sure you'll be working with her in the future on grants or different housing initiatives. Thanks.
Welcome.
Welcome.
And Mr. Maurer, our Parks Director, has an introduction as well.
I'd like to introduce Kate Yates. Kate started with us in the Parks Department as she's works in 2 divisions of the Parks Department, the Senior Center, as well as being the Leach Amphitheater manager. Kate comes to us from Colorado. She recently relocated here, where she worked for the City of Colorado and the City of Thornton, focusing in seniors activities as well as special events. I apologize, I put it on vibrate and I could hear my phone going.
Everybody's looking
We were all
around.
looking to see who it was.
Is it
I was
me?
trying to avoid it.
Not it.
Sorry about it. So with her focusing on special events and senior programming, it made her a perfect fit. This is a position, again, where Kate will spend most of the summer down at the Leach Amphitheater managing programs, special events, external as well as our department events, and then the fall, winter months, and spring at the Senior Center. So a good cooperation between the divisions in our department. Kate is actually dressed to work tonight because we have the Tuesday night concert series, so she's taking a few minutes to come here and then head down to the Tuesday night concert. So thank you.
Welcome. Congratulations.
Welcome.
Okay, now we have 2 presentations this evening. The first one is the Roger Brooks Destination Assessment on Oshkosh, and Executive Director Amy Albright from the CVB joins us.
Hi, how is everybody tonight? Good,
Good.
great. Okay, so can you see my presentation? I think that's going to happen. Okay,
Oh, there it
perfect.
is.
All right, and then we're just going to make sure that we can move it. Okay, great. Okay, so this was a 2.5-hour presentation that I am going to try to deliver in 10 minutes. If anybody knows me, they know that I'm a talker, and 10 minutes is tough even just for me in general. So we're going to get started. The CVB, the Oshkosh Convention and Visitors Bureau, contracted with a destination assessment professional, and we did that with the help of a Department of Tourism grant and the support of the Oshkosh Area Community Foundation. So we're really excited to bring in somebody like Roger Brooks. He came in, and this is taken straight from his presentation, which you can watch. I think you all have the link, but I can also send it to anybody that's interested in the link. But bottom line, a destination assessment, this man comes in and secret shops your city, your destination, which honestly is a little unnerving and a little scary. So no interviews, no heads up. We didn't tell him where to go. He just came in like he was coming into Oshkosh and seeing what we had to offer. Who is Roger Brooks? You know, why would we hire him? He has done a destination assessment in more than 2,000 communities over almost all of the states in the United States, across Canada, and many other countries. So he definitely has experience. I also think he's got a pretty cool job. He basically drives around and does fun things in communities, so it's pretty cool. Just in Wisconsin, to give you an idea of all the places that he's been, these are other communities that have used Roger Brooks and his services. When he comes in, he not only comes in with the hat of a tourist, but he also comes in looking at Oshkosh, looking at the community that he's assessing as a place to live, a place where you might raise a family, somewhere you might retire, where you might work, invest, bring a business, look to visit. So it's a little bit more than just a tourism destination assessment. Tourism, a lot of times what he was saying was kind of the beneficiary of quality of life. So when you have a great quality of life, people want to visit. So it's all kind of works in tandem. And you'll hear me talk about that a lot. He went around and took pictures. So there were like 350 slides, and I've condensed it down to about 100. So Bill's excited about that. Okay, so you can see he saw so many beautiful things. He had so many great things to say about Oshkosh. It was really fun to hear him brag about how great it was. It was really cool. So his focus, what else can we do here locally to make Oshkosh even better? So I think that's really the kind of the crux of this. It's not like, we are starting from a place of awesome, and how do we get better? And so how do we continue to get stronger and become a more desirable place to live, invest in, and visit? So really quickly, we're going to kind of fly through his recommendations. He really wanted more wayfinding signs. So when you come to a town, he thinks wayfinding is very important, and he thought that there were some opportunities there. He liked our Welcome to Oshkosh signs. He thought that we could even possibly develop a countywide wayfinding system. So these are, again, all just suggestions. These are things we can do with what we want. We might say, oh, we think it's great. We can find our way around. These were all of the places that he tried to find with wayfinding signs. So again, I reduced this down, but he found some things, no problem. He had some challenges. He had some challenges on the Riverwalk, which we all know that we are investing in wayfinding signs on the Riverwalk. So that was no surprise. It was kind of funny. He sort of uses humor, and he was, I think, saying like, does this end in Kakana, or where does the Riverwalk end? And it's kind of funny, when you live here, you take these things for granted. You know where you're going, and when you're not from here, you may not know. This was another little thing. His navigation system took him to the trailhead of the Weawash Trail, but it took him 17 miles out of town. So what are those resources to get people closer to town? The reason why you would develop a wayfinding sign obviously helps locals and visitors, but also, creates kind of a sense of place, which is really big for him. He believes that wayfinding cannot be replaced with GPS. He said, really GPS only works if you know where you're going. So if you're just driving around the town and you don't know that there is a Menominee Park and Zoo, you're not GPSing it. So some really great suggestions there. Again, wayfinding is an investment, not an expense. It is expensive. It's an expensive investment. So gave some examples. Talked about inviting people back to Oshkosh. He loved how the EA Museum did that, basically saying we're open year-round. The wait is over. Come back. Invitation to come back, seeing the changes and upgrades to construction projects. He also had some other points where he thought we did not welcome people back. So he gave that. I tried, for the purposes of tonight, I wanted to keep it very positive. And it really was positive. He talked about creating a best of Oshkosh. So really, highlighting those things that are really those tourist attractions that can really bring people here, because everybody benefits from those things. Giving criteria of what those best of Oshkosh would be. Some of them I thought I would point out were a lot of city properties. So he loved Pollock Community Water Park. The Public Museum he was very impressed with. He loved the Leach Amphitheater, and obviously talking about the concerts that are there. Loved the Riverwalk, wanted more signage there. Thought the Grand Opera House was fantastic. He loved Menominee Park and Zoo. And one of the things that he said is, why not market it as the best family park in the country? Like, let's think big here. So I think sometimes we take these things for granted, and we have a pretty amazing park in Menominee Park, and think about if we, continue to invest in it, what that would mean. Again, just his views of what he saw. Awesome job with the sign, again, talking about what's happening at the zoo, more parks, the trails. Talked about highlighting hidden gems as a tourist attraction. Gave some examples from Door County of ways that we can point out for tourists things that they can do that might not be the obvious. Maybe it's, going down to, Pete's Garage and getting a burger. He actually loved Pete's Garage. Downtown, he talked about downtown a lot. And he talked about consumer spending that takes place after 6 p.m., that women drive that spending, and that first-time sales, a lot of times 70%, come from curb appeal. He feels that there's really nothing more impactful that you can invest in besides schools that will create a faster or better return on investment in your downtown. Talked a little bit about the business mix. He did a really interesting scenario where he walked from the convention center and talked about how long it took to get to activity. And so if you were somebody that was visiting, you're going by the 100 North Main building. Of course, our office is, fantastic. But again, it's not an attraction. And it takes a while to get to something. So I think, how can we tell people that they need to keep going, that there's, cooler things await down the way before things get developed closer to the convention center? Am I going so I have to apologize because
You can't possibly talk any faster.
I'm trying. I'm really trying. Oh, there we go. Okay, sorry, I'm going the opposite way. So blade signs, one of the things he thought for the downtown that would be, really impactful would be putting up blade signs. So what he's showing here is you're looking down Main Street, and you can't really see what's going on. And then, you see some examples of stores that do have these blade signs and the impact that those can make. Using them, making them a consistent height and size, working with the city on ordinances to make sure that they are appropriate. But you can see the impact of what a blade sign does, a very small kind of low-hanging fruit that we could do downtown. Talked about curb appeal. Really loved Fletch's local tap house. If you've seen their flowers and what they've done to that property, it's pretty phenomenal. He also really liked Peabody's, the lights, and just kind of the the aesthetics and the ambiance. Talked about facade beautification and what we could do for curb appeal. Another idea was creating a buying co-op for planters and plants, and we're already kind of talking to the city and to the bid about ways that we could improve that. But again, the downtowns that do this, right? You can picture towns that you go to where the downtown might just be a little bit more beautiful. He talked a lot about the power of beautification, and I think that's something we can remember in our heads as we go forward. It's not just downtown, it's really all over our city, and that beautification sells. It sells not only to tourists, but it sells to people who are looking to relocate. It sells to people who want to remain living here. Beautification is extremely important. So I'm sorry, this is, I think, what I went by.
I think I remember in the presentation, he talked about moving benches and plants and that up against the buildings instead of out by the curb.
Yes. So
He emphasized that a lot, didn't he?
Really basic ideas, but again, just things that create kind of that front porch. So if you picture at your own house, you're probably not going to put the flower pots like out on your terrace. You're going to put them by your front door. I don't know where Bill puts his, but he's smiling at me because, yeah. So you put them by your front door because that's what welcomes people into your home. So it's really, a lot of it was not rocket science. Nothing was, a shocking discovery. It was really just things that we kind of know that we know, but we need to think about a little bit more. Again, allowing retailers to put mini displays outside to draw people into the stores. Not doing sidewalk sales, but more this kind of thing where it's, it's more a curated, put together thing. Again, this is kind of a welcoming thing. He really talked about color, and, it's funny because he's like, why is your whole town brown? And like, well, I don't know. It was probably all built at the same time. So he had some ideas with color that I agreed with, some that I didn't, but at the end of the day, color matters. So again, that's kind of where murals come in and where there's, opportunities for public art, where there's flowers and there's beautiful things. Talked about, that city center is a lot of one color, but that Beckett's really, does a nice job with the umbrellas. Again, just, similar colored buildings. Talked about parking and the importance of parking. 2-hour parking dramatically reduces spending and repeat visits. So those are things that we can look at. If we're going to have that kind of parking, where do we point them for all-day parking so that people know if they want to spend the day downtown where they would go? Crosswalks. So this is one of the things he was talking about was, when you leave Beckett's and you go to the river walk across
Jackson.
Jackson, he felt that the crosswalk was not super apparent. So he gave some ideas where towns are doing things like this. Again, things that are beautiful, but also, serve a purpose. Again, I also need to say, these are all ideas, right? None of these are things that we are just going to say tomorrow we're going to do, but I think they really do create chatter and they create conversation about things. This was kind of funny. So he walked to the Riverwalk and then it ended at Dockside, and then he said there were kids playing on the beach there, which there's a little bit of sand there, and he didn't know where to go. So again, we can route them with signage. He loved Dockside, thought it looked great. Okay, so the big kahuna, all the things that we've kind of talked about up until now are a little bit of, I guess I would kind of say low-hanging fruit. Like, they're all things that can get done. He really felt that downtown needed something that would drive people down more year-round. He said, think of your downtown as a community living room. These are some examples that he shows from all over the country, live music, different things that are going on, ambiance, aesthetics, things that are bringing people down. He said the key ingredient is program, and he really emphasized programming over events. So not necessarily planning another wine walk or something that, a cocoa crawl or things that are going to bring people down, but things that are happening all the time so people always know there's something to do when they go downtown. So he feels in order for a downtown to be truly successful, there needs to be activity 250 plus days a year. If you add up our activity level downtown, if you look at a farmer's market day as an example, the mornings of the farmer's market is Oshkosh at its best. I mean, it is fun, it is vibrant, seems like it's always sunny. I don't know if it is, but it is diverse, it's cool, right? But those farmer's market happen maybe 16 times, let's just say. And if we have to get to a number of 250, well, then we can add in other things that the downtown bid does to program and do things down there. But it is very difficult to even get to a 100 with where we are right now. So I think that's a really good recommendation of how we can do that. He feels that's really how retail can be sustainable, and that's how you bring in more business to your downtown. So you want people downtown on a consistent basis. I thought this was really interesting, 1% of your population downtown on any given night. He was here over Memorial Day weekend, and it was pretty quiet. It was pretty quiet, and we said, well, everybody's on the water. But we know that that's not true. Not everybody's on the water, so why weren't they downtown? Was there anything going on? So these are some examples where you might bring in performers that are down here. This was an example of a town that took a parking lot and turned it into a plaza. Then had an ice skating rink in the winter. This is Rapid City, South Dakota. They have had remarkable success with what they've done with a downtown plaza. And then the business comes and builds up around this plaza. The idea is a water feature in the summer. That would be something that's always happening, music kind of going all the time. And then in the winter, the concept of an ice rink, which we have been doing for the last couple of years, but we've been relying on Mother Nature. And basically, that is not the best way to be able to provide programming. Essentially, having an ice rink downtown that is one that we can control makes it more marketable. It makes it more programmable. Having skate rental makes it more accessible. It just makes it more of a business. So again, these are just more examples of what a downtown plaza could look like. I think everybody's head goes to Opera House Square, but I think there's a lot of options downtown. There's a lot of options. It was funny, some of the ones that he pointed out were really small little pockets, and then there were bigger spots. So I think there's a lot to look at in that regard. I just want to talk a little tiny bit about social media. social media is always kind of the bane and, the amazing part of everybody's existence in my world. And people wonder, why does it matter so much? But it matters because people share their experiences. When they share their experiences, other people do it. There's a statistic that says something like 70% of people like ages 20 to 40 are picking their vacations based on the pictures they can take at the destination. So what pictures are they taking in Oshkosh? This one was taken in Rapid City, South Dakota, and the person wrote, I grew up in Rapid City and it was never as cool as it is now. And I think people feel like that about Oshkosh already. And I think, how do we keep raising that bar? How do we stay competitive? How do we remain relevant? Again, more examples, more things that, ways that this could be done. And finally, I don't know where I am with time, I'm going to quick go through. Jobs are going where the talent is or wants to be. So why are people wanting to move to Oshkosh? The new reality, he says, is community development is leading economic and tourism development. Welcome to the age of placemaking. We're all working together on this. And I think the more that we work together, the more we can get done. So what people want, the people are having kids a little later. They're looking for twice the time with their kids. They're looking for safety, for good education, childcare, an engaged community, sense of belonging, cultural depth. They're looking for top-notch recreation. I mean, we have all of this. That's what's incredible. Health for kids, transportation, affordable and quality housing, starter homes, looking for places either to move up or downsize, secure jobs, focus of elected officials on quality of life. And he said our mission is to become the most desirable place to live in America, in our state, or in our county. And I really believe that we are already on our way to doing that. I think we can just get more intentional about it. So where do we go from here? We have created a Destination Oshkosh team. We're looking at all of this research, and we're using this research with the CVB for rebranding. I want to close with this because I think this is the thing that really kind of brings everything home. This is a quote from a person who works in the tourism industry, and she's very renowned for this concept. If you build a place where people want to visit, you will build a place where people want to live. If you build a place where people want to live, you will build a place where people want to work. If you build a place where people want to work, you will build a place where business has to be. If you build a place where business has to be, we will be back to building a place where people have to visit. And I think if we get nothing from this presentation, from his work that he did here, is that tourism is quality of life. Quality of life is job retention, is it's all of it. So, there we go. So any questions?
Great energy. Thank you.
I have to go fast. Sorry.
I watched the entire, I think it was like 2 hours, so.
Yes.
Kudos for getting it in 20 minutes.
Yes, 20. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Any questions? Anybody? Anything?
Thank you.
Okay, good.
Thank you so much, Amy.
Thanks, Amy.
All right, next we have citizen statements to council. And who do we have registered?
Our first one is Bill Wyman.
No, there's no public hearing. Welcome.
Thank you.
Nice tie.
Thanks. It's Tuesday. I wear bow ties on Tuesday. I like hamburgers on Tuesday too. I'll pay for it on Wednesday. I'm Bill Wyman. I'm the president and CEO of the Oshkosh Area Community Foundation. That's at 230 Ohio Street. I think I'm supposed to tell who I am and where I'm from. I've stood up here a lot over the years on a lot of different topics. I wish I was talking about tourism and how cool Oshkosh is. But today I want to talk about the housing issues in Oshkosh. Housing is homelessness is a huge issue. I think that there needs to be discussion about the complete view of homelessness from the beginning to the end. This week I sent you a diagram of what homelessness is all about. I put that up here. I don't know if
If you could turn it, just, there you go.
You can see that there's more than just crisis finding a person a home. We have to do counseling and training so people don't get into homelessness. Then we have a crisis center. We have the Christine Ann, we have Day by Day, we have Father Carr. We have some crisis centers. We need to continue to support those. Then we need to get people in transitional housing. Then we need to continue counseling. We need to continue training so these people don't fall back into homelessness. And then we have to have permanent housing. And I'm only here just to say that we need to look at the whole picture. The demographic is huge. It's not just the man you think that's sitting on the park bench. There's families, there's children, there's women, there's men. It's a big, big issue. And I'm concerned that if the council just takes one avenue and supports it through the ARPA money, that it's not going to fix the issue. There's a Winnebago Housing Coalition that's doing a terrific job. There's, I don't know, I'll say 15 or 20 organizations that are studying homelessness in Oshkosh to find out what the issues are. They're the ones that put this chart together. They have a homelessness continuum report. Please look at this, take advantage of this. They're a good group of people. Work with them. I think they will come up with some great ideas on how to address the issue. Right. I'm just here just to say, don't make some quick decisions and spend money right away. Let's look at the big picture and do the right thing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Who's next?
No further citizen statements.
Okay. All right. Then we will next move on to the public comment on agenda items.
Okay, we have Scott Hutchinson. He would like to speak to Resolution 21-348.
Scott, yes, if you could step right up here to the microphone, please state your name and address.
Scott Hutchinson, I live at 2021 Wilson. And I guess I really have a question in regards to item 1 on the agenda tonight. It's my understanding, after reading the minutes of the Planning Commission meeting, having to do with this vacation of the Wilson Avenue easement, that it was likely that the residents along the street were going to be required to pay for sidewalks. And, you know, from my reading of the minutes, there an explanation, a reasonable explanation for that was not rendered, since the street's not finished now and it's not going to be. The residents are puzzled why this would even come up. A resident fortunately asked that question. I don't know that was volunteered. So, I don't know, in the discussion of that, I guess I'd like that addressed. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, Molly Butz, she will be speaking on item number 24.
Good evening, welcome.
Hi, good to see you all. I'm Molly Butz. I'm the Executive Director of the Day by Day Warming Shelter here in Oshkosh. The address is 449 High Avenue. So I've reached out to each of you personally, so thank you for all getting back to me, and I'm looking forward to our meetings that we've scheduled. So at Day by Day, our mission is to collaboratively provide temporary shelter, individualized services, and opportunities for self-sufficiency to empower the most vulnerable adults in our community. At this time, we provide temporary overnight shelter services from October 15th through April 15th, and daytime outreach programming from April 16th to October 14th. In addition, we provide daytime appointments for one-on-one goal setting and resource coordination during the winter overnight shelter season. The Day by Day Warming Shelter has been serving Oshkosh and Winnebago County for over 10 years. The shelter is dedicated to serving the most vulnerable population in our community, successfully providing them shelter, basic needs, programs, and services with the goal of self-sustainability. We have been a critical provider of services, keeping our homeless off the streets and moving them towards a better life. Each year, over 200 people use our shelter and resources. I would like to emphasize that our current location was never meant to be a permanent location. We have been using a 6-month temporary permit for 10.5 years. A year-round shelter has been the goal of our community for a very long time. In the early years, the shelter's primary focus was simply providing shelter and a hot meal in the coldest months of the year. Today, in partnership with many local organizations, we provide programs for our guests primarily focused on life skills to help them achieve an independent lifestyle with the ability to care for themselves. Some of these programs and services that we use include one-on-one substance and mental health counseling. We have Narcotics Anonymous meeting each week, Alcoholics Anonymous meetings each week. We have a partnership with the St. Anne's Clinic offering immediate and on-site health appointments to all day-by-day guests. We have a weekly prayer group and grief support group offered by Most Blessed Sacrament Parish. We have a certified recovery coach on staff to assist guests on their path to recovery. This summer, Day by Day added health and wellness classes, finance classes, Rent Smart classes, volunteer opportunities, job fairs, resume writing classes, and interview training for our homeless community members. All Day by Day guests work through our 9 goals at the shelter with our program director and outreach specialist. Program data, including goals set and met, are sent to community supporters and our donors each and every month. Day by Day serves an adult population 18 and over. We turn away no one, other than due to capacity, offering services and support to those who are veterans, those who have been incarcerated, those who are battling addiction, those who have been abused, and those who are suffering mental illness. While we continue to provide programs and services to an increasing homeless population, our current location is no longer meeting the needs of the increasing services we provide to the needs of the homeless. Our season 10 data, which was October of last year through April of this year, shows we served 156 unique individuals. We provided 4,116 nights of shelter, served 8,232 meals. We turned away 72 times, which means that someone was given a sleeping bag and a gift card for food and turned to the streets 72 times. The year prior, it was just short of 300 times. The current challenges are abundant. We continue to be asked to do more by our community without the proper space to do it in. At this time, we can only fit 25 beds in our shelter. Therefore, as I stated before, many are turned away each night. Our overnight services are limited to 6 months per year, which makes it very difficult to continue working with people through the summer months towards their goals of self-sufficiency. And our current shelter lacks space for confidential conversations, which when people are in crisis, these conversations are very difficult. The current shelter is a 2-story building, making it very hard for some of our guests to navigate our stairs. The mattresses are currently on the floor, which also makes it quite difficult to get in and out of bed. We have extreme limitations in our kitchen. We have limited safety and security in our building. And overall, we have outgrown the space. In opening a new location, we will be able to provide a shelter and services 365 days of the year with a 50-bed capacity, turning away fewer people. Further, the new shelter will increase the programs and services we offer, thereby reaching more people to achieve self-sufficiency. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly. Are you going to stick around in case there are questions later?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Next.
everybody that I call going forward is going to be speaking on number 24, ordinance 21-367. We have Damian Brown next, and then Jason Havlick is after Damian.
Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Damian Brown. I was a resident at the Day by Day shelter. I didn't really prepare the speech. Better if I answer any questions you guys have, give you a better idea of understand what it's like, and like Molly said, how the new shelter will help. So is there any specific questions you guys have that I can answer, give you a better understanding of everything and perspective.
Council?
Yeah, how long were you there? How long did
I
you take
came
advantage
there
of it?
in December and stayed there until the last day in April.
Okay.
Yes.
And how was your experience?
My experience was overall pretty good, actually. Everyone at the shelter, as far as the staff, is very, welcoming, very understanding and supportive throughout the whole situation. And most of the residents there are, everyone comes from different backgrounds and different experiences, but we all find a way to get along, and everything is pretty welcoming most night. I mean, it's a night by night thing, but everything flows pretty well.
Yeah, I don't want to get too personal, but how did
No,
you
you're fine.
how did you, and please, you don't have to answer these questions. I feel like I'm interrogating you.
Oh,
and I
no,
don't want
you're
to.
fine. That's what I
But
came for, the questions.
Explain the transition. So how did you go from in December to needing day by day, and then now, obviously, you're living it somewhat independently or
So-
independently?
Right. So I came originally from Pennsylvania. I actually worked in food industry for about 10 years. And when COVID hit, a lot of things started to shut down. And there were some people up here that I knew at the time that said there was some way to help out. Coming up here, that didn't work out so well. And through that kind of falling through, that's how I ended up at the shelter. It was my first time really ever dealing with this kind of experience. And like I said, the program they're pretty phenomenal there. And everything was very helpful to get me back on track. Of course, still working on that, but they've done really as much as they can in the limited time that they're given. And like I said, there's the small occupancy, but even me as an individual, everything, Molly and the rest of the staff did everything that they could to kind of help me and everybody else that goes there. Every night you're there, they, do everything they can to try and make you have not only a better night, but everything going forward work better as well, if it's possible.
Sure. Thank you for sharing your story.
Oh, no problem. Is there anything else I can answer for you guys?
Councilmember Wojciechowski?
Thank you for coming here and sharing your personal experiences on this. Molly talked a lot about how, the current space has outgrown the current needs.
Right.
Could you speak to that with your personal experience? When you were there, did you feel that was the case, that, they're doing the best they can, but given the circumstances, they can only do so much? How was your experience with that?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So, yeah, like she said, most nights, they can only hold a capacity of 25. And on an average night, you're looking at least a minimum of 18 to 23 people, and that's at a minimum. I mean, most nights they were reaching capacity of 26, 27 people, and if they're going over. And the best way they can work it right now is to do like a lottery system. So when we get there, you're drawing numbers by random. So there's no favoritism at all. It's literally completely random. So if you get in, you're good, but if you're not, like she said, you have to turn the individual away, provide them with a sleeping bag and some sort of gift certificate so they can at least get a meal. Once inside, though, because the majority of us are male, though there are, of course, females that stay at the shelter as well, and we have 20 to 23 males in a facility, of course, different personalities, but they're trying to feed everybody, and even times if they weren't capable to bring, whoever was donating food wasn't capable to donate enough food, at times that could run a little short, or even, having 20 males who are trying to get showers or trying to use the bathroom, because there's only one bathroom for males and females because the shelter is so small. So like I said, being inside there is that, which creates a bit of inconvenience, and shower times are assigned, but we don't get in until after 5 p.m. And because of the way they have to arrange everything, have lights out typically by 10, you're looking at roughly 5 hours to kind of schedule, like I said, 20 individuals trying to get showers and trying to get everything they need, take care of their needs at night, and to get, rest and everything like that. And if they have anything that they need taken care of, like electronically or anything charged or anything they're trying to get done, there's also limited outlets for, charging devices for anything that they need to use for daily use, if it's to get a hold of like a work position or anything else they have to take care of the next day. And they, of course, try to help with that, but it is really, roughly, like I said, 23 to 25 people competing for limited resources as far as bathing and charging things. And food is usually pretty good, but things can happen with donations. Nothing is guaranteed. But of course, and being able to expand it, they have more room for all of that.
Thank you.
No problem.
If I may ask, were you ever one of the individuals who was turned away? And if so, where did you stay that night or those nights?
Fortunately, I never got turned away. I always got the luck of the draw of drawing one of the first 25 numbers. There was only one night when I drew a number over, but unfortunately for me, another individual was able to switch me because he had somewhere to go. But so luckily I never fell into that category, but I have seen plenty of other individuals that would go there regularly who, just because we had 30 people, some nights 35, so they're looking at 5 to 10 individuals who got turned away.
Thank you. Other council members, any questions? Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Jason Havlick, and then next up is going to be Tracy Cook.
Good evening,
Welcome.
and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to present. I believe the council should have gotten a presentation. So a little bit about who I am. I've been on the board for Day by Day for approximately a year, and I've got the opportunity to lead all of global safety and security and facilities for Oshkosh Corporation. One of the first things they asked me to do when I got on the board was to essentially lead the facilities work stream to be able to get our location picked out, as well as the programming of our building. So I'm here to present a little bit about the details of the building itself. So if you go to the first slide here, you'll see essentially our programming. So we have shrunk this a little bit since this was put in place. We're now at about 12,900 square feet for this, 12,900 square feet for this location. That has storage, so we'll have all of our volunteers to be able to do donations right there at the shelter to prevent us from having to rent storage units. We'll have our administrative offices as well to make sure that they're able to have a place to do counseling and be able to work. And then the majority of the space is for our guests, which is their sleeping areas, a living space, a computer lab, as well as a kitchen and dining area. The architects and our team continue to work through this, and we are finalizing our programming here in the coming weeks. The biggest area of question that we had to really look at is where do we put this shelter? And we really had 3 core principles that we had to use in our decision making. The first one was safety and security. Safety and security of the community, of our administration, and of our guests. The second is geographic location. Where are our guests? Where are the essential amenities that our guests need to have? And finally, financial. When we look at our shelter, we get a lot of donations of money to be able to keep our operations running, and we just need to be very frugal on how we spend money. So those are the 3 principles that we looked at as we assessed a variety of locations. The first one you see up here is our current shelter. This is one of the areas that we looked at is where we're at. The red area is where we are currently occupying. The blue area is additional space that the church has. When you look at this particular area, in order for us to be able to use this as a suitable site, we would have to do a significant renovation, basically tear it down and rebuild up. When you do something like that, you have a cost associated with that, as well as the potential of having an entire winter season where our guests will not have a place to go. So as we continue to assess that, we felt like that was probably not the best option. The next location here is Trinity Episcopal Church. This is an existing 2-story location that we felt could be a viable option. We worked with the architect and brought in a variety of different vendors, HVAC, plumbing, fire protection, structural, and we priced out the ability to be able to essentially remodel this location and stay in this particular facility. However, because it's multiple floors, you'll see that we'll have to increase our operating costs by about $200,000 per year just to be able to have staff on multiple floors. In addition, the renovation costs of this were roughly $2 million higher than going new. And again, we went through and deep dived this entire building. The next location, turn to the next page, is the Bella Cosmetology, at least what it used to be. It's downtown, it's an existing facility. The price tag of that building at that time was $650,000 to be able to purchase that particular building. And then again, we would have to continue to renovate, add additions, and so forth. So again, as we looked at this particular site, from the financial side as well as location wasn't necessarily ideal to where our guests are, we felt that that was not a viable option as well. And then we have two greenfield sites. The first one here is on Bayshore. This is a location in which we would have to do a greenfield, which would be new construction. The pricing to be able to do something at this site would be relatively the same, but all of our guests would have to cross a railroad tracks in order to get there. And that's one thing, talking with our guests and talking with the staff at Day by Day, if we can avoid having our guests have to cross the tracks, that would be, from a safety and security perspective, the best path to go. So then lastly, we looked at our preferred site, and that is CP in Broad Street. If you look at the particular location, from geographic area, it is where our current guests are at. It's very close to our amenities, the fire department, the police department, the bus stop. It is a greenfield site, so from an earthworks perspective, very limited amount of work that would need to be done for that particular site. And our goal would be able to hopefully put a spade in the ground yet this fall and be able to have our guests move in the summer of 2022. So this would be hopefully one of our last summers where our guests won't have a place to go, when we could be able to get in the building here in midsummer of next year. Just want to talk briefly about the pricing here, and I apologize the site here a little bit, but what you're seeing here is the cost for greenfield with the operation costs and so forth. So the first year you'll see it's about $3.4 million for construction and $4.3 million for the whole operating year. So that's covering operating costs as well as the building cost. And as a comparison with Trinity, we did the same exact layout, and you can see within the first year that's at $6.4 million. So again, a significant price difference from essentially trying to remodel an existing facility versus doing greenfield. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. I think just going back a few years when I was on the board and volunteered there, I believe we looked at 3 other locations. St. Jehoshaphat's on Walnut and Congress, the old Eagles building, which has now been turned into a lovely Howard. So thank you for sharing that detail. Other council members? Councilmember or Deputy Mayor?
Appreciate it, thank you. Over the last week or so, we've gotten quite a few phone calls and emails. I know you guys and your board and the executive staff over there have as well. And one of the common questions is about due diligence. You talked about it, but would you mind expanding a little bit in terms of, it's not just straight operational costs, and it's not just straight build costs, it's a combination of everything, and it's perpetual. It's not just this year, it's forever, or 10, 20, 40 years down the road. Will you expand a little bit on the due diligence that you did and the, I think you said you had an architect, but the consultants that you've used, whatever process you're using, would you mind expanding a little bit in terms of how you came to this site being your number one choice?
Right, I guess it goes back a lot to those 3 core principles that I talked about. When you look at where our guests are, we want to make sure that we have a shelter essentially where they are going to use it. I mean, if we put it on the other side of town where there are no guests, we're going to have an empty shelter. Then the second is the essential amenities that our guests need to have. We don't want our guests to be using the shelter every day. We want them to better themselves, to be able to help our community and continue to grow with our community. So to be able to have those resources there for them to be able to get that need. And just like any other project, from a business perspective, we got to make good business sense when it comes to spending dollars, volunteer dollars, and so forth. We brought our architect that actually worked in this project. I believe Mayor Palmieri mentioned this a few years ago. Utilizing the same architect that did a lot of hard work with that, and we're actually looking at the same site back there that we wanted to go there. So there's already been due diligence on the property. There's been due diligence on the earth. I mean, we know what we need to do to get the site soil ready. So when you balance all of that and you work with local strong talent within the city of Oshkosh, the decision was relatively easy for me to provide a recommendation to our board that this would be the preferred site.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Just a reminder, folks, too, that this item is the first reading. There's not going to be any action tonight. As we get into that, it is for the zone change of the parcel only. And who do we have next?
Next is Tracy Cook, and then Nancy Bain.
Welcome.
Madam Mayor, City Council members, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to speak and to speak from my heart about day-by-day warming shelter. Honestly, would not be here, standing here talking to you without them, without the support they've given me, honestly. Before I came to them, nobody, especially during a pandemic, who wants to find themselves in this position? No one. But it was a very humbling, to say the least, experience for me. And what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And boy, did it ever. I just experienced of going through what I did not want to. That was the last place I wanted to go to, was a warming shelter where you slept on the floor. Not me. But I found myself, okay, I have to. I've had a job for over 2 years and nowhere to sleep. And there's no way I was going to sleep outside. So I ended up swallowing my pride, getting in line, 10 below weather, freezing, and waiting for the doors to open and picking the right number chip to get in. I am so grateful that I did that. I am just baffled. I'm speechless for the services that I received there, for the support that I received there, for the hope that I received there, for the compassion, and for the living and breathing passion that Molly breathes every second of every day for us. We got no judgment. I felt more love from them than I've had my family, honestly. Sad to say, but that is the way they are. Every time they see you, they get to know you. They get to know you as a person, how you're doing. You can really feel that they care about you, that they want you to achieve and just grow from this and get your own place. And it's my own set of cheerleaders there, and without them, I wouldn't be here. I didn't want to be, because I had nobody. I had no support. I had nowhere to go. I wanted to keep my job. I was paying every second, every cent and every dollar I made on my job, I was paying for a hotel room, just so I could have somewhere to sleep, so I could get up and go to work to keep my job. And that went on and on and on. And I'm like, okay, now what? I went there and I was pleasantly surprised. Pleasantly. When Molly was up here speaking to you, you were looking in the face of compassion. You were looking in the face of just pure love for the city of Oshkosh's most vulnerable people, honestly. she will come down there and eat with us, talk to us like we're her best friend or something, like she's known us. Every staff too, and Denise and the volunteers, they do this because they just out of love from their heart for the people that stay there. And I don't know, I mean, I could go on and on and on and on, but I only have a few minutes, so. I think, and I know for a matter of a fact, more room, new shelter, it is a win-win for Oshkosh. Day-by-day shelter is community to me. It means community. A lot of these people that come there, it's their home. They feel the love. They don't cause, I mean, there's a couple that cause issues, but when they do,
Like me.
when they do, I mean, when they do, then they're taken care of, and there's healthy boundaries that are set in place. And these volunteers, especially at night, they're quite assertive. They're strong, and they don't put up with nothing. And I was, like Damien was saying, 23 men. Maybe there was 2 women, 3 women at most, but I was like one of the women, and I'm like, okay. But I did it, and I just grew from it, took advantage of game nights. They have game nights, they do activities, which was amazing. The meals, the food there is really good. It is really good. And all the resources that are offered to the people that stay at the shelter. I am a domestic abuse survivor. I've stayed at Christine Ann Center, was my second home at one time. And I've stayed through that too. I have not found another place that really offered the compassion, the understanding, what people need just to lift them up out of their situation. That's what people need. They don't need judgment. They need, let me help you out. It's going to be okay. We're going to get through this. And that is what they convey to me. We're going to get through this. This is not your life. You're going to overcome this. I'm an overcomer. We're going to all overcome this. And I've seen this through Denise and the volunteers. I'm just speechless just of the example that they have been to me, the example that they are to the city. I mean, they're pure. They are. And yeah, having the new shelter will certainly beautify Oshkosh. Definitely. Because people have somewhere to go. They have their family there, their friends. They feel like they belong. Everybody wants and needs somewhere to belong. And people that are struggling and going through this hard situation, chapter in their life, it helps just to have, it doesn't matter, little, a mattress off the floor would be nice, but, they offer everything like clothes, if you need clothes, blankets, they even do laundry, so you have clean clothes to wear to go to work. They do wake-up calls. They do everything they can to remove a barrier. And cannot say enough about them. I cannot
Tracy.
say enough.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
You're
Really
welcome.
appreciate it.
You are very welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, Nancy Boehm, and then Tina Hafman.
Welcome.
I'm Nancy Boehm. I'm the Reverend Deacon Nancy Boehm, and I serve Trinity Episcopal Church here in Oshkosh. And I come to you today in three capacities. I come as a deacon trying to live out my vocation to bridge the gap between the church and the community, especially in the area of need. I come to you as a enthusiastic and engaged community member, having lived here my whole life. And I come to you as a board member for the Day by Day Warming Shelter. I'm probably going to repeat some of what you've heard, but darn it, I worked hard on this, and, and it's hard to keep a preacher down. So, Scripture, no matter what faith you are, you've lived by a scripture or a doctrine, whatever, does not shy away from the difficult and unpleasant reality that some people have experienced terrible setbacks and hardships in their lives, some of them to the point of homelessness. Scripture also recognizes that poverty, social injustice, homelessness, those things are real problems and they plague a society, and they definitely can plague the city of Oshkosh. But it says that we should show generosity, compassion, kindness, and mercy. And those are all well and good when you say those words, but we need to show them in a real and tangible way so that people can feel it. So it was 10 years ago, 10 years, 10 months, and 3 days, that a group of people came together at the church where I serve and sat around a table. There must have been between 20 and 25, and they were ready to tackle this issue of homelessness. And I was pretty excited because I didn't make any effort to do it on my own, but with a group, I thought this was really great, and it was something that needed to be done in this city. And tackle it they did. They moved forward right away. Well, with a few setbacks. But they secured some temporary housing. They raised some money. They were moving forward at a great pace, and this was all well and good. But here we are, a decade plus later, still in a temporary place. And that temporary place is the biggest stumbling block to the work we have to do. You can't operate a successful homeless shelter on a part-time basis. Because guess what? Homelessness is not part-time. All of us have a home. We have walls. I'm pretty sure all of us have a home with walls and a roof, windows, a place to shower, a place to cook, to keep your food cold in the summer. But these people don't have a place for almost half a year, for not even a full day. They are constantly out in the elements, the extreme heat, the extreme cold, the blizzard that happened on the day we were to close, COVID, rain. They don't have walls and a roof. And that's because we're in a temporary building on a conditional occupancy permit, which I understand. It's all in line with the ordinances here in the city. I totally understand that, but we need to do something about it. And so that's why the Board of Directors has been working for years to establish a permanent site for the homeless population. And it's not just our intent to put a roof over their heads. As you heard before, our intent is to help guide them and support them to a state of self-sufficiency. And we need a place where we can do that. We need a place where we can do that full time. You can't work with them half a year and expect them to make their goals. We only have so many hours and days in our building, and that's really a stumbling block there too. You know, this isn't rocket science. It's simply common sense. If we are to be true to our mission, if we are to be true to who we are as human beings living in this community, and have a successful outcome for the city of Oshkosh, we need a place of our own. And we've now identified what we think is a great option for a permanent home for use by this agency. This isn't something new. We've been in this situation before. We've identified places. But it's been a slow and difficult journey because stumbling blocks keep getting thrown in our way. And one of those biggest stumbling blocks, and I'm afraid you're all going to hear about that, is not in my backyard. And there are people all over town that could have other things that happened in their backyard that didn't want it. How about the people who live across the street from the water treatment plant? Or down the road from the sewage treatment plant? Do you think they wanted those in their backyard? But if we're going to be honest, and I'm going to ask you to be honest with me for just a minute, we're never going to find the perfect place. We are never going to, because there will always be somebody who says, no, not here. And that's because there's a negative connotation to the word homeless. But maybe, just maybe, if we had a shelter and we could show this community the success that we could accomplish full-time, they would see it, and it would start to take away that negative connotation. Put that down. Hard to keep me down, but
Just
I'm not going to go on any further.
one more minute.
Okay. I just want to say there's a certain sense of irony in all this. We have this agency. We have a very active board of directors. We have a wonderful executive director. We have an outstanding staff. We have gracious, wonderful, giving volunteers right from this community of Oshkosh who work hard and who work tirelessly to do something about the homeless. They work hard for the day-by-day warming shelter, that agency, which, ironically, is homeless. So I come to you today, and I beseech you, please, walk with us on our journey. Help us ensure our success. Be a part of our solution. Give us a home. Please, give us a home.
Thank you. Tina Hafman?
Tina Hafman, and then John Damel.
Welcome.
It's hard to follow a preacher, but so I'm just going to go. But I've known that preacher all my life. So my name is Tina Hafman. I live at 1307 Washington Avenue. I'm a lifetime resident of Oshkosh. I'm actually a lifetime resident of Washington Avenue. I've lived in 3 houses in all of my life. So I just want to give myself some credibility by saying that I was in a group of people that founded the shelter. In the very beginning, we had our first meeting in December of 2009, actually, where this group said, yes, we're going to go ahead and do this. We see this need. We have explored it all along, doing due diligence, all along researching what's going on here and what's going on in other communities. Up in the Fox cities, they're 10 to 15 years ahead of us. In the housing continuum that Bill talked about wanting, I was really glad to hear him say he wanted a continuum because, okay, yeah, this is the step. This is the beginning step. We do need other things, but I don't want to overwhelm the city council with where we're going to go next after this. Let's just get this done. Now I work up at Levin in the Fox cities, which is an organization that helps people in financial crisis. I've worked there for 3 years, so I've personally talked with 600 families that are on the edge of food insecurity and about 80% of them in housing, that are housing insecure. Levin in 2019, so pre-pandemic, helped 4,000 families avoid eviction or having to move or getting them out of that. So I feel like I know what I'm talking about because I talked to people this morning. I talk to people. I also do casework up there. So I've talked to people for years. I kind of see trends. I see kind of the same thing over and over again. So I just want to read this real quick, and then I'll be done with you. I do hear complaints that visitors to the park and amphitheater for this location do not want to see those people. I have been asked why we can't find a place out of sight so no one has to look at them. And I've actually heard suggested twice, twice people have said to me, why don't we just get a bus and take them to Appleton? And I can tell you from working up there, people in Appleton not too keen on that. Because every April when the shelter closed, a lot of our folks find a way to get up there into their already crowded shelters. That's not a pervasive attitude, but I have heard it and it's pretty disturbing. The argument that a building for sheltering the community's most vulnerable must be hidden away out of sight is at least in part based on the assumption that all the guests are dangerous addicts and criminals. And you can see from the two gracious people who spoke tonight that that's not true at all. That's an assumption based by people who don't know any better, people who have not spoken to the people who live there. If that includes you, then I invite you to come down and talk with them and volunteer down there. We have hundreds of volunteers, hundreds of dedicated volunteers. I've always called Day by Day a miracle of community because it allows the community, I think there's like 400 volunteers on their list, allows them to serve in a way that makes them feel good. The meals come in from the community every night. That's a pretty big deal. It's 180 meals a year. An uninformed suggestion would be to find an old building that doesn't have adequate facilities for human habitation and ask the fire department to allow for a temporary use permit for another 10 years or something. Of course, there need to be cost estimates to bring an old building up to code, like sprinkler system, that's a big one. And that's a big reason for building a new place. ADA access, adequate bathrooms, kitchens with proper ventilation, storage space, laundry facilities, and many other things. This exploration of old buildings has already been thoroughly explored by people dedicated to addressing community needs. They haven't just been sitting around for these 10 years. We've been thinking about this for a long, long time. So you may or may not know this, how people become homeless. Anything that causes an economic emergency can spiral to homelessness. A divorce, losing a job, losing a vehicle, becoming ill with no or high deductible insurance, development of a disability, or simply not receiving the dignity of a living wage. And I can tell you from interviewing hundreds of people that wages is a major factor. All this can lead to the need for temporary shelter and help finding resources. I don't know if you know that 40% of the guests at Day by Day are employed, and virtually all who are able would like to work, but may need help finding work they can physically do. And lest you believe the new building would attract homeless from out of town, in general, now, I don't work at the shelter now, and I'm not there every day, but in general, when I was there all the time, most people that were there had a previous address that was Oshkosh. These are our community members. These are Oshkosh people. A new building dedicated to sheltering our community's homeless with appropriate facilities and room for resources actually announces that Oshkosh is a compassionate community that understands that our poverty rate is one of the highest in the area, higher than the state average. And about half our students in our school system are eligible for free and reduced lunch, significantly higher than the state average. This is sad, but it is true. Commitment for an accessible and dignified shelter shows that we also understand the lack of affordable housing in Oshkosh is a true crisis. That's not just in Oshkosh, that's everywhere, but it's particularly bad here. A year-round shelter at the location proposed will allow those who are homeless to find a meal and a place to sleep safely during the entire year. Currently, those with nowhere to go wander around the city at night looking for any nook or cranny to sleep in. They tell me how desperate they feel, how uncomfortable they are, and how frightened. Crisis workers and police will be grateful to have a nearby location for those who need a place to be. In truth, the proposed location has been thoroughly studied and carefully planned. It is the best location. Guests need to be near buses to get to work, have resource access at Winnebago County Human Services, use the Salvation Army meal program and food pantry, and find safe haven at the public library where many spend their days, which in my opinion will be the next step on the continuum. All of those resources are already located near the proposed shelter location. For 10 years, Day by Day has been struggling to find a way to more appropriately address the real community need for shelter and resource connection. If you haven't been part of the discussion or solution for the last 10 years and you're just now showing up to say that Oshkosh residents and visitors need to be protected from the sight of those who are homeless, then you're part of the problem. Please do not put up barriers to a viable solution. this is a viable and good solution. Bill did hold up that report that was excellent, that just came out. There's a few places to find it online, but I think if you look in the Winnebago County Housing Authority, it's a homeless and a continuum report, and it's awesome. So as city council members, I wish you would look that over. It's pretty, it's long. But I won't be any longer, so thank you very much.
Thank you. John Damo?
And he is our last registered speaker.
All right, thank you.
It's nice to be on this side of the mic again. I gotta admit that.
I would expect the county executive to wear a suit and tie.
Well, this is a suit and tie you're going to get out of me. And tonight I'm here to talk as a resident community activist. A lot of good things were talked about here tonight. 4 months ago, it would have been over my head that we're here to talk about zoning change. So I think that's not lost on me. And I understand that we don't want to feel like we're rushing this. There's a couple of things I want to consider. When I'm looking at ARPA money, I'm thinking about the glaring holes that we had during the pandemic. And our homeless is one of them. We couldn't find a spot for them to cool down in the summer. The library was closed, not that it's their job to make sure that they're cool. My crew was running ice to them twice a day, 3 times a day when it was 90 degrees or more, because the ice would dissipate, with the rule that they weren't allowed to have beer in my coolers, which after the first time I caught them, they listened to that rule. I never found a can of beer in the coolers again. The year-round shelter is important because when we get these guests in October, we have the entire 6 months to work on them. And then we send them off again, and they lose their shelter and they lose their jobs. This year, actually, we put some money through the county to help house some of our guests, like Damien here, in a hotel room, so he can continue with that job, so he had that stable housing until he could finally get himself a place to live. That's the thing. That's why we need that full cycle. There's no perfect spot for this. I get it. It's not an easy thing to do. But then again, we're here to talk about a zoning change. Molly, you don't have a shovel in the car, do you? No, we're not going to be digging right after this. But we do need to take those next steps to consider this. Now, I understand some people think that we're in a rush. My question is, why is it taking so long? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have no further public comment on agenda items, so we'll move on to consent agenda. We'll take a motion and a second on consent.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion on consent. Councilmember Ford.
Just learning how to use this button. No, I was hoping we could bring up Mark Lyons to answer the gentleman's concern about the item number 1, the partial right-of-way vacation at Wilson Avenue. And my understanding there is the concern is that that would become a cul-de-sac someday and there'd be a special assessment for the residents to pay for it. Is that correct?
So kind of the item that's on the agenda is just setting the public hearing date for the actual street vacation. One of the items that was discussed at Plan Commission several months ago when this process started was once that street right is vacated and a cul-de-sac is constructed is whether or not sidewalk would be required of the existing residents. Unfortunately, I don't remember the answer Mr. Gurek gave from our Public Works Division to be able to answer that, but I will find out and look into it so I have that information, Council, prior to Mr. Robbie Copley answer it.
All right. Thank you, Mark.
The answer that we had given during that Plan Commission statement was, as with any other location in the city where there are currently not public sidewalks, the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee can make recommendations to this council, or this council could choose to order sidewalk in at any location where there isn't. So, that was what we told the resident is, should the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee make a recommendation and the council choose to act on it, the sidewalk would get ordered in at that time. But that is, really the process right now, barring a reconstruction of that street, which would also generally trigger installation of sidewalk.
Okay. So, just
Go ahead.
Can I follow up quickly? So, to the resident, right, city staff has to be careful. I mean, that seems to me a long way of saying that's probably not going to happen anytime soon, but I encourage you to speak with city staff to have you get that answer off the record. Thank you.
And thanks for coming. Other council members? Councilmember Hanson?
Miller.
It's Miller.
Oh, sorry, you guys switched seats on me. Councilmember Miller.
Thank you, Mayor. James, could you just briefly kind of explain item 10 there, the easement and what happened there?
Yeah, the sanitary sewer easement on 2750 Vinland, I believe that is. Yeah, there's, excuse me, there's an existing sanitary sewer easement through this property from when the property developed in the city many years ago and there wasn't sewer there. Through a small portion of it, you know, whatever happened during construction, a small portion of this pipe is outside of the easement. So doing an amendment to the easement to make sure that the pipe is within the easement. And then because as the property is developed, there are some encroachments into our existing easement that are going to make it very difficult for us to be able to do things with that sewer. So setting up another easement location where in the future, as if this site were to continue to expand and grow, we would have a location to relocate the sewer to. There's also been some indication that the property owner may be looking at additional property to the south, and we've indicated in the easement that, you know, should that come to pass, you know, we'll get back together with them again and set up a different location.
So we just basically got out of the easement during construction, we're fixing that problem?
That's one part of this action, yes.
Thank you.
All right, I see no other council members, but I have a couple of questions on item number 13 on approval of the general development plan amendment and specific implementation plan for a multifamily development located southwest corner of Jackson Street, Marion Road. Mr. Lyons? It looks like there was a base standard modification to allow multifamily use without outdoor recreation space, and I don't know if Councilmember Ford, or if you would start with the reasoning for allowing that, or
Yes,
deciding.
so this is one of the kind of unique characteristics of the zoning ordinance where we're developing in an urban area, but we don't have our urban central mixed-use zoning district. Multifamily in that district exempts out that recreational space requirement. Because this is along the river, it carries our riverfront mixed-use zoning district, which does have that requirement. So it's a bit of balancing through the plan development, the urban character of it, along with the riverfront character. When staff reviewed this, we felt it did make sense to remove that requirement because of the urban setting.
Mr. Lyons, do you have like a sense of how many apartment units or living units have been added in that quadrant down there in
Yeah.
recent years?
There has been several hundred apartments units added in that area.
And so the linear Riverwalk is supposed to serve all of those?
Correct. Largely in that urban area, we use the Riverwalk, Riverside Park to accommodate those similar needs that you would have for recreational space on a more suburban type of development.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, one more thing. There was a question that came in via email, and I had the same question, so they read my mind. The choice of black as the building facade with the special ceramic siding, is there any concerns about the solar loading with that?
No, when we reviewed the materials, and I know we discussed this quite a bit at Plan Commission last week, it's kind of a muted black gray that shouldn't have some of those urban heat island effects that you would normally associate with those darker colors. And the material has some pockets and stuff in it to help absorb that heat.
So new technology.
Yep. Yeah, this is a new product. We have not seen it yet here in the city of Oshkosh, so it's exciting to see some of those new products coming into our market.
Thank you. Right. We're ready to call the roll on consent?
Wojciechowski,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
All right, very good. We will move on to pending ordinances. Ordinance 21-364, amend ordinances pertaining to enforcement of parking restrictions within parks and boat launches. What's your pleasure, council?
I move approval.
Second?
Any discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Wojciechowski,
Aye.
Erickson. Aye. Ford.
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Hanson.
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
Next is ordinance 21-365, approve official mapping of right-of-way connecting the western end of Mockingbird Way to the eastern end of Winsong Terrace. Plan Commission recommends approval.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on 21-365? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Wojciechowski,
Aye.
Erickson.
Aye.
Ford.
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Hanson.
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
Next is ordinance 21-366, amend ordinances pertaining to definitions within the animal ordinance, chicken keeping and beekeeping ordinances, and create ordinance pertaining to duck keeping.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion on 21-366?
Does anybody want to hear my joke again?
Yes, please. Please share.
Does anybody know the difference between a duck egg and a chicken egg? About $3.
Done. Done. All right, if there's no other discussion, please call the roll.
Wojciechowski,
Aye.
Erickson.
Aye.
Ford.
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Hanson.
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
All right, the next two ordinances are new ordinances. There will be no action this evening. They are first reading. And the first one is 21-367, approve zone change from urban mixed use and urban mixed use district with a planned development overlay to institutional district with a planned development overlay for properties located at the northwest corner of CP Avenue and Broad Street. Plan Commission recommends approval. Again, there's no action on this item tonight. I do have a question for Mr. Lyons. And that is, I had to go back to where I underlined a question. So, in the staff memo where we talk about the proposed warming shelters considered an indoor institutional land use, quote, which is not permitted in the existing urban mixed-use zoning district and is a conditional use. Could you just give us a little bit of background in the public as to why this would not have been allowed in urban mixed-use zoning district?
So the urban mixed use zoning district, the UMD district, does not allow that by either permitted or conditional use. The use is only allowed in the institutional zoning district through a conditional use permit. So this initial step is setting up that base zoning district, so the applicant can then go forward with the plan development and the conditional use permit for the final use. But it needs to be an appropriate base zoning district before we can start those later processes.
But do you know why in the definition of urban mixed use it would not have been permitted by right, the institutional use?
So most of our institutional uses in the code are limited to the institutional zoning district or the central mixed-use zoning district. The urban mixed-use district is typically related to more of neighborhood-level commercial, retail, housing-type developments. So that's where there's a little bit of a difference between some of those more central mixed-use and institutional.
So it's a long historical practice.
So every zoning district has its abilities to have some flexibility within it. At the time of 2017, when the code was written and that table was established, that was kind of the common practice that was used.
Thank you. All right, our next item, again, as a new ordinance, no action will be taken, and that's 21-368, amend various sections of Chapter 30 zoning ordinance pertaining to small solar energy systems. Plan Commission recommends approval. Councilmember Wojciechowski.
Thank you. As a member of the Sustainability Advisory Board, I'm glad to see that this was passed by the Planning Commission. You know, that we had mentioned that this was kind of an urgent issue, especially trying to get it done during summer. And I'm sure my colleagues have seen the emails. We got, I think, 2, or maybe I just got one of them about, you know, trying to speed up this process. And I know we have suspended the rules to skip the second reading and just pass it the first time. I'm wondering if there is a reason why staff would be against doing something like that, or if that's possible.
Staff wouldn't have an objection. Typically, city attorney advises you on making sure you do that correctly in terms of it's a suspend the rules, correct? So you have to make a motion to suspend the rules to waive the second reading would be the appropriate motion to make.
I would like to make that motion, but if anyone has discussion prior to me doing that, I'd like to allow them to do that.
We'll need a second first.
I'll
On the motion.
second that.
All right, discussion on the motion to suspend the rules and waive the rules and adopt on first reading. Councilmember Wojciechowski and then Ford.
I guess I would just say, some of the conversations that I had with people and some of the points I brought up, the sooner we can get this done, I think it just benefits residents in the city if we can get this moving. I know it's only about a 2-week difference, but, I don't see why we can't do it now. And, I know the precedent is to do it the second reading, but the resolution, or the ordinance, is, thoroughly laid out, and we were pretty made aware of what changes were going to be made. I don't know, I just think that it would benefit to move this quicker. Thank you.
Councilmember Ford.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I normally don't like to deviate from our established process, but our last plan commission, we actually had one of these come before us going through the old process. So someone had to be like the last individual that had to pay that fee for it. So I'm fine moving this forward because I think we're all in agreement here.
All right, any other discussion on the motion to waive the rules and adopt on first reading? All right, please call the roll on the motion.
Wojciechowski,
Aye.
Erickson. Aye. Ford.
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
All right, then,
I move to approve.
Now the main motion.
I'll move to approve 21-368.
Second.
all right, any discussion on the amendment? Councilmember, Deputy Mayor Mugrower.
Appreciate it, Madam Mayor. Just really briefly on this one, I know we've had some, as Councilmember Wojciechowski alluded to, some emails on this one, and many of them are coming from the same people, and that's okay, that's good. They're staying on us, and they want something done, and that's how you get change affected, is you make sure you consume our time, and you make a good argument, right? I just wanted to point out, this is how the process is supposed to work. We had something that people didn't like. The process was cumbersome, extra cost, or too high of a cost in some people's opinion. And they went through the process. They went through City Hall, they went through the Planning Services and Plan Commission, and the process worked. So that's the only thing I wanted to point out, that that's how you affect change. So somebody at home was a little annoyed with us, and that annoyance kept building, and they finally, they put that energy and effort into something positive, and so we're making a change based upon that. So just wanted to acknowledge that our processes do work. Sometimes they're a little slow, but the process works, so that's all I got.
And I appreciate Councilmember Wojciechowski and comments by Deputy Mayor, especially in light of the seasonality of installation of these solar panels and the amount of time that it, what's that?
It's not a good winter project.
No, it doesn't work to install these in winter, so appreciate that. Any other discussion on 21-368? Please call the roll.
Wojciechowski,
Aye.
Erickson. Aye. Ford.
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Hanson. Aye. Miller,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
All right, moving on to new resolutions, 21-369, award bid for Public Works contract 2109 to Vinton Construction Company for 2021 parking lots construction and restriping, $783,863.20.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on 21-369? All right, please call the roll.
Wojciechowski,
Aye.
Erickson. Aye. Ford.
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Hanson. Aye. Miller,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
And 21-370, amend the City of Oshkosh fee schedule pertaining to chicken, bee, and duck keeping within the city.
So moved. Second.
Discussion? I guess just a real quick question. What is the change in the fee, Mr. Lyons?
So the fee is exactly the same. In this instance, we are just adding duck into it, as we just recently approved the duck ordinance. So
Okay.
just need to make that change so it's on par with the chicken and
$15 a
beef.
year, correct?
$15 a year, correct.
And the permit application through your office, right?
All done through planning services.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion? Please call the roll.
Wojciechowski,
Aye.
Erickson. Aye. Ford,
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Hanson. Aye. Miller,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
No quacking over there, Miller. All right, 21-371, amend the City of Oshkosh fee schedule pertaining to docked mobility systems pilot program application fee.
So moved.
Second. Discussion on the docked mobility systems pilot. Councilmember Wojciechowski.
Thank you. So I know we had a discussion about this when it came to council before, the initial conversation about making this possible. Does this, make any changes or pertain to, like the conversations we had about allowing them on sidewalks and, kind of like those logistics? Does that affect that?
So this does not affect any of the ordinance requirements that were put in place when council did this a couple months back. We took that time between that period and now to work with some of these potential pilot program individuals and wanted to really figure out how much time investing was even needed in the city prior to instituting the fee, because we wanted to make sure it was a balanced and appropriate fee. Also, now that we've spent a number of months working on it, we wanted to come back with the appropriate fee.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Ford.
Yeah, I just want to point out too, in case the audience didn't all read the staff report, that the fee is designed to cover the administrative costs, and any profit we're making off it is minimal. It's not the intent.
All right, seeing no further discussion, please call the roll.
Wojciechowski,
Aye.
Erickson. Aye. Ford,
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Hanson. Aye. Miller,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
And now we are at council discussion direction to city manager. Future agenda items. First item is workshop discussion on drafting marijuana decriminalization ordinance. Councilmember Wojciechowski.
Thank you. So as I mentioned at our last meeting, it was the intention, we brought this conversation to the DEI committee, and their intention was not to take the lead on this, but rather they'd like to see council do it. So the next step in that process is trying to establish or schedule some type of workshop with council where we can invite, different stakeholders who we feel, are necessary in this conversation. So really, I just wanted to put this on here to see if we can get some type of workshop scheduled to talk about this specific issue. And I don't have a preference on when that is. It's basically whatever works for everyone.
Other council members interested in that workshop? Deputy Mayor Mugrower and then Councilmember Ford.
Actually, I'm going to defer to my Councilmember Ford first, if he
Okay.
doesn't mind.
See, that's why it's good to be the deputy mayor. You can get away with that. I can't do that. I'm a lowly council member. I guess what is the intent? I don't think we've ever had a workshop with the express goal of us collectively drafting an ordinance. So I'm just curious what the goal is of the workshop.
Sure. So, I guess my idea behind it is presenting, basically the Madison resolution that was passed, and getting input from different stakeholders on, what changes need to be made or what they think should be made, what should be added, taken out. It's more so not necessarily formally crafting the ordinance, but getting input from all these different stakeholders, so that an ordinance can be, created, drafted, and then goes through the normal process of coming through council and then second readings and getting all the input. But this is kind of a, I would think an efficient way to get all those stakeholders in one room, to give their input, as opposed to, me just presenting something and then they come to a meeting and give their input. I think this is, a more efficient way of doing that.
Deputy Mayor?
I appreciate it. And Councilmember Ford actually asked my main question. I'm concerned about going right to a workshop. I'm also concerned about our calendar for the rest of this year. in terms of if we look at not only our calendar, but staff's calendar, this time of year into the fall is a bit much in terms of budget and working through our biggest thing that we do is drafting and crafting that budget and passing that. But I guess my concern is going to a workshop about drafting a full ordinance. I think, and maybe it'll come, you've got to have 4 to even be willing to have a workshop and set a date and a time. So if it doesn't gather four nods to even have a workshop, it may die right there. But instead of going right to a workshop, and I'm not going to use the word wasting time, but going to a workshop and having that discussion, I think it should be right here, pretty clear, if this council wants to take up the topic in general at all. I think maybe, I don't want to put words in my fellow council members' mouths, but I think that was maybe something where Mr. Ford was kind of going, should we have that discussion first here before we even use that exercise of putting words to paper? Everything's worthy for us to discuss up here. But if we don't have the interest of at least 4 to move on that topic, it may be in vain.
Councilmember Erickson.
Thank you. I think I am supportive of having a workshop. I think it's helpful to have stakeholders involved from the beginning, like you mentioned. I think this is a topic that we need to kind of think through, and I think having the process of having people who are interested in the topic and moving this forward involved from the beginning rather than it coming to us first. I think that's a process that I would like to see. I think potentially having something to react to initially at a workshop is helpful, and then working with the stakeholders to kind of go from that point. But I'm supportive of a workshop. I think that can be a productive way of getting people involved from the beginning.
I guess I'd just like to ask a clarifying question too, because it's my understanding that we already have an ordinance that is non-criminal, that is an option to law enforcement. Is that correct, City Attorney?
Correct. Our ordinances are not criminal, so we do have an ordinance that regulates possession of marijuana. It would be enforceable by a citation. I can tell you we do see some of them, and I can also tell you typically, we would, as we prosecute them, offer community service, offer potential diversion programs when we deal with these issues as well. But I haven't gone through and done any statistical, how many citations are issued, how many,
Sure.
Nothing like that. But our common practice is we look at it, we are not, what we prosecute is not criminal to begin with. It is a city ordinance violation, and our practice is typically to offer community service. In some cases, that's not, doesn't work well for people, and so we may look at other options as well. But
So if I could just ask a clarifying question after this, is that, Councilmember Wojciechowski, is the goal of this to get to a point in reducing the fine so that it is somehow more equitable, or am I?
Yeah, and I think that's just one part of it. I think, the reason to have a conversation is to be able to look at what we currently have and see if changes need to be made, or if additions need to be made, or, language updated. I don't know when the last time those changes were made, I think.
It was a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it would be good for us to take a look at that and see if changes do need to be made to stay updated.
Councilmember Hanson.
Or Miller.
I'm sorry.
She's a lot better looking than me, so thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Lynn, I see the chief is in here, but can you just maybe walk me through? So we have 2 options to charge. We have an ordinance, we have a city, basically a traffic ticket.
correct.
Or to charge criminally.
Correct.
So the only thing we have control over is the traffic ticket or the city ordinance. So if we took that away, the only thing the officers could do is charge criminally. Is that accurate?
They always have, they have discretion to charge or not charge. They have discretion to charge with a criminal charge or to issue a city citation. They can also not issue a citation at all. It all depends on kind of the totality of the circumstances of what they're dealing with.
But just to clarify, if we took
But
away
if
the
we took the
traffic,
city ordinance away, then that would no longer be an option.
so it would be just a criminal charge?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And yes.
Can I
Councilmember.
clarify that? When you say criminal charge, does that still apply for nonviolent? Or like, does something else have to be involved for it to be considered like criminal?
It would be a violation of the state criminal statute.
Okay.
It would be not a city ordinance, it would be under the state statutes.
Okay, thank you.
So I'd be supportive in us having a workshop discussion on further review and stakeholder input on those current available remedies and whether or not council wants to move forward. It appears we have 3 folks. I guess the question would be timing if we have 4.
Well,
City-
if I could just real
Yes.
quick, and, you know, this doesn't necessarily mean, and I know it said workshop on drafting an ordinance, that was just because that was the language, but, you know, it doesn't necessarily, we don't, you know, at the end of this, at that workshop, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean an ordinance has to be created. I think the idea I'm trying to get is, you know, a starting point conversation just on the topic in general. And I think, you know, having some type of separate conversation on that would be beneficial as opposed to just doing it here.
All right, let's see. Councilmember Ford, Councilmember Miller, and City Manager.
Yeah, so I guess my main concern when I heard the description of the workshop is that using the Madison language as a base, and correct me if I'm wrong, City Attorney Lawrenson, but my conversations with the police chief, it was made clear to me that that is in violation of state law. And I don't want us to get together as a starting point, working off of a document that is a total non-starter. So I don't know if maybe just having a presentation here to get us going, to look at fines or look at, one thing I suggested is why don't we push this into one of the equity measures that our departments are going to be coming up with anyways. So I think we have options, and I swear I'm not just trying to slow it down or anything, but I don't think it'd be productive for us to sit down and have a workshop on something that's a total non-starter.
Councilmember
Sorry.
Miller, and then Hanson.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a very complicated issue, and if we take away the ability for our officers to slap a kid on a wrist as opposed to charge him criminally, I don't feel good about that. I think this should be an officer's discretion. If we eliminate the ordinance, it's going to force our officers to write criminal tickets to kids that probably shouldn't need to get a criminal ticket. The other thing is it doesn't change anything for the DNR. This excludes all UWO property campuses. Am I correct, Lynn?
You're correct, and that was one of the things I was going to address is it is a much more complex issue than it might at first appear because you have different jurisdictions or different entities exercising jurisdiction in the city. You also have potentially, like, how do you want to deal with schools and possession in schools or, you know, near school property, those types of things. It's probably something that's a lot more complicated than it at first appears.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hanson, City Manager, then Councilmember Wojciechowski.
I think Aaron should rebuttal the statement before I put another one in there.
All right. All right.
No, yeah, thank you. Just to echo a couple points. And you're right, it is a multifaceted issue, and some of the points you're bringing up are exactly why I think some type of more detailed conversation needs to be had, because, you know, something like this, the language matters, and, you know, that's why we need a starting point. You know, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. You know, I think that's why working off an existing document and changing it, you know, how we feel comfortable, personally, I just think saves time. I mean, if you want to start from scratch, you're more than welcome to, but, you know, to say it's a non-starter, I would disagree. That's like saying states that have legalized marijuana are in the wrong. And, that's a personal opinion that you can have, but whether you like it or not, it's done and it's happening. But we're not saying that those states are, in the wrong for doing that. I mean, maybe you hold that opinion, but, we as a city have jurisdiction over ourselves. We don't over the county or the state or the federal government. But we do have the ability to, make changes that we think we want for our city. And, not everyone here agrees with that, and that's fine. But I think the conversation needs to at least be had to give people public input, to give those stakeholders, that information, because you might be surprised on the level of support or just the information that you might learn on this topic, because it is ever changing, at the governmental level, and I think it's worth having those conversations.
Councilmember Hanson?
Okay, so I think that this should be an in-council meeting discussion. If we want to have the public come in and talk about it, we should be able to do it that way, but having the workshop just seems like an extra thing that we could already be doing in this meeting. Believe that we need to all deep dive into the regulations that we already have set forward, and then come back and just add it to the agenda for one of our next meetings to mull it over a little bit more together. All see it from different sides, bring it back together, and then go forth next then with a workshop if needed.
City Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wasn't consulted about this item, so I'm just speaking from my experience with workshops. I think the words workshop on drafting have a few little issues about how we normally do a workshop. A workshop is typically exclusively for council. If you want public input, we've had public input at very few workshops, so it's not like it's unprecedented, but typically the workshop is for council to get educated about a subject and have a discussion later about it. Drafting an ordinance, I will just say, a camel is a horse by committee. Typically what council does is provides direction to me that I forward to the city attorney to draft the ordinance based on council direction. Whether or not it's legal or illegal, I'm not going to get into that tonight because we're just talking about scheduling something. I would suggest that if you want stakeholders involved, that the workshop format isn't necessarily the thing you want. You probably want some public input. And if you recall, for those of you who were on the council, I believe it was 2018. The room was pretty full.
There was a couple of attempts at a petition.
There were petitions and things like that. And the petition, that's not necessary.
Right.
A council member can bring the issue up. Whether you do it at a special meeting or invite people to come in, if you want public input, the workshop format may not be the best, but you could do it as a separate time. There are scheduling issues. Somebody mentioned scheduling issues, but so it might be just to catch up. I would say let staff and the city attorney draft an ordinance if that's what you want us to do based on direction that the 7 of you come up with, and then we'll present something to you. But I think you want to educate yourselves on, the issue that council members Wojciechowski and Ford just mentioned, along with the other things. Chief's not here tonight. He can give you his perspective on things. City attorney's going to give you law perspective, operational perspectives. There's a lot of stuff. And some of these things have been popping up through this discussion that we can provide some education and background about where we were 3 years ago and how we got here 3 years ago and where we go from there. And there's a little bit of stuff. When I was aware it was on the agenda, I went back and familiarized myself with what we did in 2018. And there's a little bit of history to that.
All right. Councilmember Wojciechowski, Ford, then Erickson.
So just for clarification, I think workshop maybe isn't the appropriate term then. The goal is really, as you said, to get public input, and whether that's a special meeting, I don't, for me, it's semantics at this point. I want to just make sure that we're able to have a meeting where the public can come in, give their input, where stakeholders can be there. Nothing has to be voted on or, put together. But I think it's a good idea so we can have that education with city staff. So, we can say after hearing all this input from stakeholders, from people, this is what we'd like to see in an ordinance, et cetera, and then going on the normal process. So I don't know, I apologize if workshop is not the correct term. The goal is to have some type of meeting, separate from a normal council meeting, so we don't have to spend a whole lot of time, so we can spend separate time talking about it, educating stakeholders, and then go on as we normally would with some type of new ordinance.
All right, before Councilmember Erickson, I just want to ask something here, because I heard Councilmember Hanson referring to putting this into the usual order of business. Is it appropriate then to just bring it in the form of a resolution for us to discuss and have a staff memo prepared as background on a future agenda?
We don't have to vote on anything, right?
Well, the resolution, if there was staff background, then that could allow for public discussion on, I don't know if I'm overcomplicating this or simplifying it.
Like what we did for today for the warming shelter, hearing everyone's side of it, but not voting on anything.
I mean, that's fine if that's council's, direction. And my thing was, well, I guess I was getting at to get all that input before we're even presented a resolution, so they even, so we can even,
No,
give
I'm
our
on
own
the same
input.
page with you.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, this is the first time, at least that I know of, that you've brought it up to anyone else on the council. We need to all, like, talk about it, because I feel like you're hitting the ground running, and we're all just not even at the starting line.
Well, this discussion is to set up that initial meeting.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
a resolution can be brought to council, but I feel like even before a resolution is drafted and it's come to our council.
Yeah, so we can talk about it in a
Yeah.
meeting. We
Okay,
don't-
so we're getting pretty far into the detail here. I want to go ahead and allow Councilmember Erickson, Councilmember Ford, and then Erickson.
Oh, thank you. Trying to resist the urge to get all public administration professor, but I'm going to. I take the structure of government seriously. I made a career out of it. Local government's a creature of the state. That's not an opinion. Those are the parameters under which we operate. If we pass something that's in violation of state law, we have something that's totally worthless. Does not accomplish anybody's goals. Again, these are not opinions. When we go around government structure, when we try to subvert the work of our bureaucrats, the people working on the front lines in government, we're going to ultimately end up with things that don't get done. Implementation matters. So I urge all my fellow council members, if our goals are to get something here that actually moves us forward productively, we have to operate within the constraints of our mandate. So I encourage you all to do so. Thank you.
Councilmember Erickson, and then City Attorney Lawrenson.
I think, to me, it just seems like there's a lot of questions still, a lot of education that's needed. So whether that looks like we can meet before have a 5 o'clock meeting, input session. I think there's some work we all have to do. So still supportive of us coming together, having an opportunity to hear from stakeholders, but also us kind of learning what are the options, where are we at right now, what does this look like? So.
One of the suggestions that I would have is that you let us put some information together. Right now, I will just be honest, I wouldn't have any idea of what kind of resolution or ordinance you guys would even be looking for, so to write something up to put on an agenda is just going to be really difficult to do. But we can look at some of the information from 2018, where we, what we looked at that time, where we can look at the Madison ordinance. I am very familiar with the Madison city attorney. I actually talk to him about once a week. So I can get some information from him relative to their ordinance and how they are enforcing it or not enforcing it. The chief may be able to get some information together. It might be something that, I don't know if we want to put it on outstanding issues and give us a little bit of time to put some information together. And then we can present that, and then you can decide where to go from a little better knowledge base.
And the advantage of that, because it would be a discussion issue with council, public input could also be brought to bear on that. So I think the city attorney has trying to craft an outcome here that we can all work with.
Councilmember Miller, and then Deputy Mayor Mugarauer.
Thank you, Mayor. Lynn, we have control over the dollar amount of the fine, correct? The council
Correct.
does? I can't echo Councilmember Ford's words more than what he just said. I'm not interested in creating an illegal document that is toilet paper or wasting staff's time, city's time, our time. Maybe if what you're getting at is lowering the fine, that is something I'm willing to discuss. But I'm not willing to create an illegal document and move the city forward based on that. It's just, I'm not going to go against state law on behalf of the citizenry of the community. So, but I think we're all willing to look at, if your goal is to lower that fine on our side of the fence, the city ordinance, I'm more than willing to do that.
Deputy Mayor?
Appreciate it, thank you. Councilmember Miller set me up pretty well on this one, because I have a clear question. What is the goal? And that's a fair question to ask. We've had discussions on big topics before. The mayor and I, we've had long discussions on special assessments. This is a similar hot topic that will garner public input, and it should. That's absolutely needed when we're talking about things. But what's the goal? If it's simply to reduce a fine, that's a simple discussion that can be had right here on any given Tuesday night. That 4 of us 7 can alter or not. If it's something bigger than that, I'd like to really know what the goal is. If it's to push the state to do something, that's not something I'm interested in. If it's political in nature, it's not something I'm interested in. This body shouldn't be diving into that. Ours is already decriminalized in this city. We are already more advanced and farther along than many other communities. So if the council member would be willing to answer that question, I'd appreciate it, but I think what's the real goal?
Yeah. I think one of them is trying to lower the fine, but I think, as Councilman Ford said, the goal is not to do anything that goes against the state. So I think what we need to look at, or what I would like to look at, and maybe this is in gathering information, what is in our jurisdiction? Like, what more can we do? What do we have control over? Because I don't know all the legal sides of it, or what exactly is under our jurisdiction to change. So I think one of the easy goals, I think, that we could do is lower it, but I'd also like to dive in more and see if there is more that we can do. I don't know that off the top of my head. I'd like to see if we can do more. So I think right now it's just about having a conversation after getting more information from these different entities.
What sounds to me like we have more than 4 who are willing to have the conversation about the fine and background information about what we did a few years ago. Are we okay with starting there? And, yep, sounds like.
And I'd be happy, as the city attorney suggested, putting it under outstanding issues so that if we can't have it, we won't dally on this. It's just that we'll keep it there so that if it's not next meeting, we'll keep you posted about when we think we're ready to schedule it.
I guess
And it'll
my
be-
question would be technically then, since we typically at the end of the year assign our fee changes.
We change them all the time. I do not want to get Mr.
These are
Miller
not
going.
in the fee schedule that gets presented to you at the.
They're only a
in the
fine in the ordinance.
Yeah.
Okay, okay,
Thank you.
all right. All right. Next up, future meetings, future workshops. City manager.
Couple workshops just to bring to your attention, just to keep them on your calendar. Second budget workshop is August 31st at 5 PM. That'll be the 2022 early projections and directions on priorities from the council. And then the all-day workshops on October 18th and 19th. The discussion of other workshops and everything, I think with this previous discussion, doesn't matter what it is, we've got a lot of stuff going on, and scheduling meetings is really going to be tough. Council gave me a goal for working on facilities. Mr. Urban is pretty ready to go with his presentation. There is one overlay that that Mr. Urban is working on as a result of something that he's been made aware of, that we really need to update an ADA accessibility study for our facilities. Mr. Urban's working on that independent of the council's direction to work on facilities. I'm not trying to stall Mr. Urban's project, because Mr. Urban's project could be scheduled at your convenience. It's ready to go. The ADA overlay may add a little depth to it. They're going to be here next week, literally just before EAA, because they can't stay the week after. So they're going to come make a real, like a 4-day visit, I believe, to do an assessment of all of our city facilities, and then they'll produce a report. That probably means somewhere in August. Do you want to wait for Mr. Urban's facilities study until we get the ADA stuff, and then just kind of give it to you all at one time? Then I'll just keep it on the schedule and just, it'd still be to be determined, but we're going to have to pick a date. And I think Mr. Fitzpatrick may have some input on this. I think it's going to take more than just having it at 5 o'clock. I mean, the facility study is pretty thick already, and that's before the ADA stuff.
I guess, in the interest of our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, I feel like the ADA overlay update is a priority. Obviously, our facilities are a priority, but I personally would like to see the ADA information first, and then if we don't decide at that point until we get the rest of the facilities comprehensive study, that's fine, but that's my wish.
Mr. Fitzpatrick, could you agree that we would need more than just a 45-minute workshop at the beginning prior to a meeting?
I would. I think it really wouldn't do it justice.
Fitz could spend 45 minutes telling us about his golf swing.
And that's,
which is terrible, by the way.
It is. I'm glad he said that. But yeah, I think we really wouldn't be able to do it justice in 45 minutes. And I agree with the mayor. I think it's something that, although we haven't talked at the DEI committee about it in great depth, it's an issue that I think once they become a little more aware of what's going on, they're going to be very interested in it too. And we did discuss it when we broached the subject of the CIP, because the council's aware that we have a variety of facilities issues that need to be addressed, and we thought that this could be a helpful addition to that analysis in order to focus priorities and consider those priorities based on the outcome of this study. So it's really focused on all public areas of our buildings and facilities. So it's not an entire encompassing study that will talk about other areas of ADA. It's a very strict segment of the ADA law.
Is this just specifically to physicality or?
Yes.
All right.
Right.
So given that it's also, for those of you who may not know, Disability Pride Month, July is.
Right.
It seems very fitting for us to.
Yeah, I think it'll be another consideration, I think, for council when you take a look at some of the facilities that we need to address, not knowing what the outcomes are. I think there could be some real interesting information that would be helpful for you.
We asked for a comprehensive, analysis. This is part of it, so it seems reasonable.
What I suggest doing is, for the next meeting, we'll have an update from the consultant about when they're projecting to have it done, and we'll just keep it live to keep you posted on where we think we can mesh the two together. And but maybe Mr. Fitzpatrick, we can get the report out, Mr. Urban's report. It's ready, pretty much ready to go, right?
Sure. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So then it'll put you to sleep on a warm summer night.
That's the entire, all of our facilities, related to Mark's goal. But then this other project is just another overlay for your consideration.
And then you can look at that and see how they mesh.
And we'll have a map along with that asset inventory, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So, timeframe, TBD, you'll just put it on outstanding issues, or?
It is on outstanding issues because
Yes.
of.
But I mean the
it's one of
new
my
date.
goals.
I mean.
Yeah, the date,
okay.
yeah.
The workshop date.
I guess if I may, I would like to ask council, we've been doing the 5 PM as far as workshops. do we have enough folks to consider doing either early morning or lunchtime as an alternative? Or would we like to continue the 5 o'clock? Because I know, Councilmember Wojciechowski, you're more like 5:30, right? And that doesn't necessarily give us a lot of time. So I'm just wondering if there are other schedules to think about here too.
The 5 PM works very well for many that worked day jobs, first shift. I understand, I think Mr. Wojciechowski doesn't necessarily have the same hours or maybe a little bit later. I think that's probably where some others get done a little earlier.
Yeah, I would say don't schedule around me. I mean, mine is like basically 9 to 5:30, so like mornings, unless you want to do really early in the morning, that's fine, but afternoons and, I mean, 5, it is what it is. I mean, you know, I will show up, you know, as soon as I can, but I'm not going to hold everyone else back from if that time works best.
Okay, just thought I would put it out there, touch base. And then we have workshops with the CIP projects?
Just a continuation of this afternoon's workshop, so it'll be all the other non-public works departments, and I'll start with Parks for the mayor. So we'll be ready to go for July 27th for that.
And looks like you're looking for direction on inactive liquor license for non-renewal Brass Rail.
We received an application on, June 28th? So right under the wire. So this is something that's been inactive for over 2 years now.
Since August of 2019.
So given the consistency with council's previous action, staff feels it's appropriate to schedule a non-renewal hearing. The person can come and make their pitch to you and you can take the appropriate action. That would be my recommendation. I think city clerk's going along with that as well.
Correct.
July 27th?
That might be, I don't know if we have enough time. Will we?
We're ready. We're ready, yeah.
I defer to their,
All right.
great.
And subdivision code follow-up? I believe you were looking for specifics on parkland
Just wanted to
dedication
keep-
after the chapter 30 discussion?
Yeah, we had the workshop last month, so it's been 30 days, so, if no one's given a ton of thought, we could certainly put it back on, but, we had the workshop. Parkland dedication was probably the biggest issue, and I know the mayor and I talked briefly about it earlier today. The parkland dedication for multifamily was probably the biggest thing that you were concerned about. But I don't know if there's any other thoughts that other council members had, or if we can put it on another agenda. It's certainly up to you. But Mr. Lyons is here anticipating, the discussion that I think staff had, that's one of the obvious ones, is dealing with parkland dedication for multifamily. So, Madam Mayor, if you want to
Yeah.
kind of kick it off.
Yes, I just, I guess, first of all, I know that oftentimes Plan Commission has had a number of items that have come through for zone changes, and that then changes to the plan development version of that zone. And I guess I just wanted to have Mr. Lyons, share a reminder with council that when that happens, this piece of the code does not apply with the PD, correct? The flexibility built into the plan development exempts that requirement of parkland dedication as we currently have.
So it's not actually the PD that has that effect.
Oh.
It really comes down to, is a CSM or plat needed? If a CSM or plat is needed, then our current code, under the subdivision code, requires a parkland dedication. If you have base zoning and need a CSM, you still have to pay parkland dedication fee. If you have base zoning that allows your use and you need a PD and need a CSM, you pay parkland dedication fee. You think Ripple Avenue Apartments. That went through a PD process, but it needed a CSM to create their parcel, therefore parkland dedication applied. If those processes don't need a CSM, so it's just an existing base parcel, regardless of zoning, whether it's a plan development or base zoning approval, they don't have to pay those fees. So it's
And
really
how
the
often does
land
that
use.
happen?
I would say more of our projects don't need a CSM than do.
So, from staff's perspective, what's the next steps that either we should be considering or we should be directing from your perspective?
So if the council's goal is to increase parkland or fee in lieu of, we would probably be looking at removing it from the subdivision code and putting it into another mechanism that is triggered regardless of subdivision requirements. So it'd be that philosophy change from subdivision only to all development.
So we're only talking about one small segment of that workshop, though, right?
Correct.
Because just isolating that one individual piece, while it can achieve an individual's goals, it's really quite complex, because this is not just fix one little thing and we smile and we walk away. It has multiple ripple effects. If we start increasing, and I don't disagree that there are some developments that are not paying their fair share in comparison to others. But the moment we start requiring that or doing that, we also drive up the costs of those developments. So we drive up the cost of housing if that's what we're going after. So but yet if our goal is to have more affordable housing and reduce costs and reduce barriers to development, we've now just put another hurdle in their way. So it's not just as simple as that.
Yeah, there's really two sides to this. There's the actual subdivision ordinance, and then there's city policies that go along with those elements, whether they are the who pays for what when element or how we handle parkland assessments. Our goal is to, if possible, move the legal subdivision ordinance forward as soon as possible, with knowing we still need maybe some discussions of maybe not the technical legal document, but those policies. We do have an outdated subdivision ordinance that we would like to update when reasonably possible. Okay. So that's why we wanted to start that workshop to get we know there's a lot more discussion that needs to take place than just that subdivision ordinance element of it.
Okay, 2 points, and then we'll have Councilmember Miller and then Councilmember Ford. First off, so it's a one-time fee, our current dedication fee, correct?
It's split into two parts. Half of it is paid at CSM, half of it is paid at building permit issuance.
But there's a $1 amount for each of those fees. So if it's a single-family dwelling, it's a couple $100s, and when we're talking about $360,000 new homes being built, it's not exactly going to make it not affordable to add a couple $100s to that particular parcel.
Correct.
On a multifamily, it's a smaller dollar amount times that multiple units, correct?
Correct. There's two amounts that are used within the current subdivision code. One applies to single family, one applies to multifamily units.
And then the other thing is, with consistency, in our city policies, we talk about the amount of impervious versus pervious percentage. And so it doesn't always have to be green space for it to be pervious, correct? Like,
correct. There are some other elements that could be that are considered impervious. Or,
yes.
Excuse me, considered pervious.
Pervious, yes. The water can trickle down.
Yes.
All right, just those two things. Councilmember Miller and then Ford.
Thank you, Mayor. Just for all of staff, not just Mark, but when we upgrade our ordinances and our zoning and things like that, we always leave carnage in our wake, because what one person thinks they had yesterday, they don't have tomorrow. So the only thing the developers want out of us politicians, local politicians, is consistency. They want consistency from City Hall. They want consistency from us. So I would ask that when we update these things, let's be cautious of the people that we're taking something away from within these upgrades. It's just a simple ask, because we see it every day. Hey, I thought a 12-unit parcel, it's valued at this. Now I've got a 6-unit parcel, and I'm probably exaggerating. I don't think we cut it in half very often, but there's always somebody that pays the piper when we upgrade these things or update them. So please walk cautiously.
Yeah, a lot of the goals of this subdivision ordinance is exactly that, mirroring what is maybe practiced in 2020 and getting us brought up to what those standards are from when that code was written so many years ago. And streamlining the process. That old code still requires lots of paper copies and things of that nature that obviously in business in 2021 is not done that way. So just making sure we keep up with some of that stuff.
Councilmember Ford?
I'm good. It's too specific. I'll save it.
Well, we're supposed to be giving direction here on next steps, so
Then I'm going to be real
please.
specific. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Plan Commission, Plan Commission has the ability through negotiations and plan development to request parkland in specific situations. Am I incorrect in that?
It is not something I can recall us doing through a plan development.
Okay.
I'd have to give that a little more thought and see if that it would be something that is directly related and correlated through land use. It very well may be. I just have to give that a little thought.
No, no worries. Thank you.
As a planner, do you have any equity concerns with regard to how we currently do this and have done it, as opposed to the equitable way in which to assign parkland?
Yeah, I would say when we look at how, so we had a study done with East Central Regional Plan Commission last year that looked at how we do it compared to other communities. A lot of other communities are applying that standard across the board, not just through the subdivision ordinance.
Thank you.
The purpose of the workshop was to propose some changes to the zoning, or to the subdivision code, excuse me. So I think what we can do is we can,
Can we have
propose some-
options?
Yeah, with some different options and everything. So we can circle back and identify things that we want to change. To the degree we need to communicate those things before they're adopted, so everybody knows what, if we're making any major changes. The mayor and I specifically talked about parkland dedication. It's a lot more than parkland dedication.
Yes.
There's a lot of, housekeeping's probably too simplistic a word, but we got to get up to date, requiring paper plans. That's just, that's so.
Did that just get missed when we did the 800-page zoning code update?
So the subdivision code is a separate document from the zoning
Oh, that's right,
ordinance.
chapter 30.
I keep saying the same thing,
Yeah,
so
it's-
that I'm making the same
It's
Yeah.
part
misunderstanding.
of the Chapter 30 zoning ordinance, but it's really its own living document that has a separate state law that governs it.
All right.
So, I think I got a pretty good idea where Mr. Lyons and staff can take this. Thank you very much.
All right, do any council members have updates on boards and commissions? I'll just quickly say that last week I did have a meeting with the chairs for the boards and commissions. Apologies to those newly elected chairs that didn't get the invite in the transition. You'll definitely be invited to the next quarterly one, and appreciated the input from folks that wanted to continue virtually, and that's what that particular group will be continuing to do for the foreseeable future. Councilmember Hanson.
Public Arts and Beautification is continuing the mini mural project, and we were also looking into putting up 2 larger murals located behind Satori near Carrot and Kale in the smaller alleyway. And there is an event coming up called Into the Night that'll be happening in October.
I love that event.
It's
That
gonna be
is so
fun.
fun. Are they gonna have the, flamethrowers again?
They're talking about different activities that we're throwing around.
Great. Other council members, boards? All right. Liquor licenses, Councilmember Ford.
Yeah, just real quick, we all received a few questions about our liquor license process. So I want to ask Mark a few questions, or City Manager Roloff a few questions, if he would help me combat some of the perception that the city revokes and hoards licenses, so we can somehow pick and choose who gets them arbitrarily. So I guess first off, Mark, how many liquor licenses do we have available?
We currently have 8 licenses available. Those include 2 that are reserved for the Sawdust District.
Okay. Are those other 6 earmarked towards any specific
There are
location?
no earmarked licenses other than those 2, which are earmarked by state statute, not by the city of Oshkosh. Years ago, with Marion Road, there was a reservation. We lifted that I forget when, it's been that long. And part of the reason was because we needed flexibility. I think it was the convention center at the time. We needed to loosen it up for the convention center. See, Pam's memory is better than mine. But we did it, and we started to recognize, we need to be more flexible. The fact that we have 6 flexible licenses available gives us capability to not have what I used to call the beauty pageant. For those of you who had gone through Leadership Oshkosh, you may recall that, and the mock council meeting, the mayor may remember that because you sat in a little bit. We don't do that anymore, and I asked Patty Andreessen-Shue at the chamber to no longer have that as part of the mock council meeting, because I think that mock council meeting created a perception that there's still this beauty pageant approach where literally you have a half dozen people competing for one license, and then the council has to, in their wisdom, decide which one gets it. That created a lot of conflict, and I noticed that the first and only time we did the beauty pageant approach, and I just felt it wasn't appropriate. We have the ability now, because we've collected back licenses, now we have a pool of licenses, so that if somebody comes up, and I'm aware from Angela in the city clerk's office that somebody has inquired, and yes, we have a license available, go through the process, you get cleared with all our inspections, and you pay all the appropriate fees, and we're going to bring it to you and recommend approval unless there's some reason that we would think that they may not be, usually because of a background check or something, that we wouldn't do it.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is our policy is designed to facilitate economic development. When a new business wants to come here, we have these licenses on hand. They meet the requirements, it's applied evenly across the board, they get a license.
Absolutely. I mean, it is that simple. Apply and we will get them for you. There may be another license freed up depending on what happens with the outcome of that non-renewal. But if that person turns around, I think we told one of the applicants for the non-renewal, look, if you have something coming up, these licenses will be here available for you to use. It's just that they're not tied up in scattered places throughout the city, and then there's almost like a secondary market where it depends on who you know.
Yeah.
The only person you need to know is Angela in the clerk's office. Put in your application and we will take care of you. Now there's a lot of pressure on Angela now, and I apologize.
Councilmember Wojciechowski.
Yeah.
This is just for maybe clarity's sake. Does the amount of liquor license our city has, is that set by the state?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
We're grandfathered in because before they put a cap on it, we had a lot of bars.
That's what I
So we're still good, but I think.
More than churches?
More than what?
More bars than churches?
It's probably, there's probably a connection there, but yeah, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
We're having fun.
And that was good information, because I think there might be a perception that we set the limit and otherwise we could just give out as many as we wanted. So it's good to know that it's really not our choice how many we give out, but
No.
the pool makes sense
But I
in
think
that
the way
case.
we're managing it now gives us the capability to use it as a true economic development tool. And, I can tell you that I'm aware of 2 businesses being interested in on Oshkosh Avenue. They're not reserved, but Pam and I are making mental notes about who's asking so that we keep it. We're going to need a couple more in the Sawdust District. We're going to need one over at Pioneer. Having these available when they need them, we're going to have them. And that's really the key element here. We're going to have them because we're not letting them, put under a rock somewhere. They're open for everybody to see. And it's amazing how they can quickly turn over once we create that pool of licenses. I think it's been working very well. I think Pam is kind of a refreshing change for you as well.
It certainly is. It gives the ability for businesses to grow in our community.
Thank you for getting the facts out there.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Aaron.
This is just a curiosity. Is this the practice for other states? Do you know that set liquor license limits for municipalities?
You said state, so Wisconsin's weird.
Okay.
I'm just telling you.
Well, I know we have unique drinking laws and stuff in general, but I was wondering specifically with the liquor license if that's normal practice.
Yeah, I can't say I know all the other states, but there is the Tavern League exercises a great deal of lobbying influence that dictates these things.
Okay.
we actually have another license available. It's a $10,000 reserve license if somebody wants to pay that. I hope we never get to the point where we have to force one of our businesses to pay 10 grand when everybody else pays what, Pam?
A new license is $650.
So, I want to avoid putting ourselves in a situation where a business has to do that. That doesn't exist in other states I would say for the most part. So we're trying to avoid that.
So if I wanted to open up a new business over on Oshkosh Ave called Drunken Donuts, I could go apply for the application and,
Yeah, but I would check with a trademark attorney, but other than that, yes, the answer to your question is yes.
or XYZ business.
Just,
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
exactly.
And if I could, just bring council up to speed. Mr. Davies from the Sherman House on South Main Street, he stopped in today and picked up his liquor license. He had met all his requirements and inspections.
Oh, good to know.
Wonderful.
Congratulations.
Okay, city manager, it's up to you.
Thank you. There's a memo in your packet regarding a professional services agreement. With all the interim changes going on in community development, we're hiring a firm that actually provides services to other communities to basically do administrative work related to community development block grant. During this interim period, we think it's appropriate, and we have a contract for $17,000 to carry us through the rest of the year. ARPA funding update. I use this with, I'm going to date myself, but from Don Henley, the more I know, the less I understand. I think that has a lot to do with ARPA. My understanding is that the feds are going to come out with some final rules, I believe this week. We'll cross our fingers and hope that happens. We're still learning a lot about what the rules are. And I had put a deadline, but I've always considered it a soft deadline of people suggesting ideas and everything. At the same time, one of the topics that was raised at the Board and Commission Chair meeting last week was that some boards and commissions take a meeting or two off during the summer. And I asked all the departments to meet with their boards and commissions. Well, some of the board chairs said, we haven't had a chance to meet. Is it too late? And there was no way I was going to tell those boards and commissions that they were too late. So I'm going to instruct departments to, get it on the next agenda, but recognize we might have a little delay. With that said, Councilmember Erickson and I were talking about some other urgency, concerns about evictions perhaps rising once the moratorium's lifted at the end of this month, assuming that it doesn't get extended yet again. What I'm hearing is it's not going to be extended, but what do I know? I thought it was going to expire 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, we were told that last month
So,
too. Yeah.
but there may be some urgent issues, but what I want to do is compile what we have to date, present it to council in more of a category, kind of a little twist on what I did earlier where I said, here are eligible. Now it's like, here's the profile of what we have. Here's what our Palco survey is saying. Here are some other things. And get some general direction, and I'd say very general, then we come back with specific recommendations. Is there anything that you particularly want us to focus on in the short-term, long-term type of thing? You've heard me say.
Long-term, up until 2024.
Yeah, up until 2024, yeah. And, as I've said, because of the loss of revenue feature in there, we don't know, for example, what the loss of room tax revenue is going to be through 2023. We can only guess. That's the best we can do. So we need to keep our powder dry for all the uncertainty that's there. And then, are there anything immediate that we want to address? So I don't know if it'll be the next meeting, but the idea is I want to compile this all, give it to council and say, have a discussion. What are you thinking? Where are you leaning type of thing? And then we can start working on that and saying, given what we've heard from you, here's some recommendations.
So on that note, we asked Ms. Butz to kind of hang around in case there were going to be other questions. And I guess, I don't know, maybe this is a obvious question that got overlooked. Has Day by Day put in one of the request forms for the nonprofits?
Oh, yeah. How's that work?
I mean, we assumed that, but I only had 700 words, but I made sure it was. You only let them use 700 words?
Well, that was what Darlene used to put on the CDBG application. Ms. Erickson asked me the same question. I was like, I'm not doing a word count. I'm not a professor at the university that might crack the whip on that. No, this is about a dialogue that we need to have. We've had a great dialogue with Day by Day. I learned a heck of a lot about Christine Ann through this process. And I'm not trying to lean one way or the other, but I understand a lot more than I did. And so those are things that it's not, one of the questions I got at the workshop, and I can't remember who was there, it might have been Deputy Mayor Mugarauer, but it was like, is it an all or nothing? We submit and we say yes or no. This is not about this. This is about finding out what your needs are. Is there a way for us to meet those needs? Is it appropriate? Of course, but is it all or nothing? It should not be all or nothing. It should be, what can we do? What can we address?
And does it fit in the rules?
Yeah, it doesn't restrict us from doing those things, so why create rules where we don't need them? And I think it's like, have a discussion with these groups. What are your needs? Get a little more information. And I think there's also opportunities to figure out where we can collaborate. And that was Councilmember Erickson's and I discussion today was more about where else are, for example, tenant support coming from other entities. I learned that the library was eligible for some ARPA funds that are not available to municipalities generally. Let's learn more about that. Jeff Gilderson Dewey has some really good ideas that he's trying to pursue. He's actually talked to the police chief. So there's so many things that we're still learning, but there are also urgent needs. So we got to address the urgent needs and keep our powder dry for future needs.
Councilmember Miller.
Thank you, Mayor. Mark, you've got everybody throwing their hat in the ring here for this stuff, and I want to caution you in particular, but more importantly to the rest of my colleagues, but we've got a much bigger chance of upsetting more people than pleasing people in this process. So I don't know if a scoring system or something with a consistent policy that's fair and equitable to all the groups requesting this money from us. I have a real problem picking winners and losers in this with our taxpayers' money. I mean, I'm getting a tremendous amount of emails angry that we're even considering using this money outside of our capital improvement budget. So, I mean, I just want to caution everybody to take a deep breath in here and come up with a process, I guess.
That's why part of my goal is to get some general direction about what categories do you want to fund. And I'll just go to one extreme. It's 100% infrastructure, Mark, don't bring anything else back. That's very clear direction. It's going to disappoint a lot of different people, and you're right, I think there will be people that would be angry with any decision if they're on the outside. If they're on the inside, they think you made an awesome decision. But getting some general direction on how much infrastructure, how much support for businesses, individuals, nonprofits, those types of things. I think getting some general.
The direct assistance to households was the first on the list, right?
It was on the list. Depending on who you talk to, the one you sent me was from the Association for Nonprofit Agencies. I think they would disagree with your statement. They would say nonprofits are number one.
They were a little biased.
And there's a lady in the back row that probably agrees with that statement. But there's the dilemma we have, and I think.
But they did have some suggested criteria, and I appreciate Councilmember Miller bringing that up, because you and I had that discussion today, right? About, in the grid or the matrix to have, these other ways of scoring, does it match up to the strategic plan? How does it address those that were overly impacted by COVID? So I appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm taking this all in, and I appreciate that. So that's kind of the status, but I think the next thing you're going to see is a summary of where the breadth of our requests to date. Not, I don't want to shut the door on another idea that may come down the road. So that's all I have on that one. Room tax report is in your packet. It's not intended to provide it to you on a continuous basis, but we do have that room tax report that we receive monthly. It doesn't do a projection about where we think room tax is going. It's just where it is, and the spreadsheet, it doesn't give you that level of detail. But it does give you some good history about where it is, and we're happy to provide that to you. We get this, and, we're way behind last year. Come July, we'll be ahead, and then we'll see where it goes. We're not going to be close to 2019, not even close. And, this doesn't do a projection, but my projection is we're still going to be $600,000 to $800,000 short of 2019's number.
Excuse me, city manager, just one moment. I'm sorry, were you registered to speak, or was there something that we missed with you this evening, or were you just here to watch?
We were more curious as to when our liquor license was going to be approved. It was supposed to be on the agenda today.
Oh, I'm sorry, what?
What's the name of your business?
Crossroads Champs.
Yes, that was approved earlier.
It was in the consent agenda.
Okay.
Oh, sorry that you sat here all night. I
Yeah.
just saw that you were asking.
We
I'm
get
so
paid to
sorry.
do this, so.
Hey,
Yeah.
hey, and these permits fly through a lot quicker if you bring beer to the party.
No,
Thank you.
Give Angela a
Sorry
call in
for the
morning.
interruption.
Thank you for,
Yeah.
yeah. Where was I? Room tax report. So we'll provide this to you just so you keep an eye, but, we know that we're going to be under 2019 still. And that goes back to the ARPA discussion, so we've talked enough about that for now. There's another professional services agreement with security that staff providing for, I believe it's for, a variety of facilities in the city. So that's just part of our CIP for this year. And then outstanding issues, happy to answer questions you might have.
Since the goal on homelessness is on the outstanding issues, I believe Molly had something else on that. Were you waving about that?
I didn't know if you were going to ask Mr. Patton why he was here, and I was like, he's with me. He's one of my board members.
Oh, okay.
So, because you were asking people, and I'm like, well, you clearly know Amy and Jesse, and I was like, oh, no, he was
No.
with me instead of.
Okay, all right.
Sorry.
I just didn't want to pull something out of order here.
No, I'm good, thank you.
Thanks for calling attention to it.
On special assessments on the outstanding issues, I think you were going to give us an update on the report. Council got a packet on the background, but you were going to let us know about the anticipated report from R.A. Smith.
Yeah, the mayor had asked that I provide some background to what happened 2 years ago when the council rejected the latest proposal. Thought it'd be good background for you. Mr. Robbie and I are meeting with Mr. Mazonik of R.A. Smith in a couple weeks, 2 weeks from today. So I'll probably have a, hot off the press update on that. One of the things we got to make sure we're doing correctly is making sure that they can act as appropriate agents. Apparently, there's issues with utility confidentiality. We want to make sure we're respecting that. At the same time, we also, I made a pledge to the Chamber of Commerce that when we were ready to have something, that they would have an opportunity to look at it after council receives it. So we got to make sure that we're working towards that. So I'll have a more complete update at our next council meeting. Anything, I did have a note to add, the outstanding issues, the future meeting for the marijuana ordinance consideration. And if there's any other questions, happy to answer them that are in the outstanding issues. If not, that's all I have. I don't have a COVID item.
No COVID update?
Nope, just get your shots if you haven't gotten them.
Vaccines are still available.
That's all I have, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.